Chapter 1591. Killed. In the darkness, even the heaven demons felt that their senses were greatly affected. They could not see, hear, or sense anything that was more than 30 meters away from them. This was inconceivable. For those that had reached their level, they only needed to release their divine sense, and they would be able to even accommodate a whole planet in the range of their senses. And now, all of a sudden, their senses were restricted to a diameter of around 30 meters, which naturally was something that they had difficulty to adapt to. There was nothing they could do about it. So what if they were peak stage heaven demons? They had only grasped the regulations of the netherworld, so how could they possibly be a match for the present Ling Han? This was being overwhelmed by his superiority in regulations. Ling Han brandished the two swords like a 1,000-armed guardian deity. Sword chi danced unhindered, and blood spurted in all directions. He was too strong. His individual battle prowess was enough to overwhelm even peak-stage heaven demons, and only the 10 strongest big shots combining forces would be able to stop his progress at the minimum. But now that they were being enshrouded by the darkness, what combining forces? Easier said than done. This created a massive opening for Ling Han, allowing him to attack freely as he desired. Pu. One after another, heads flew. They were all the strongest beings of the current era. There were earth demons and black demons among them. However, yellow demons did not even have the right to participate, so they'd managed to avoid this calamity. And whether it was being beheaded by the divine demon sword or the broken wooden sword, that would be a fatal blow. It was guaranteed that not even their spirits would be able to flee, as they would be destroyed. A bunch of liars who uphold a false reputation. Ling Han uttered coldly, and the divine demon's sword in his right hand slashed out. Another earth demon was killed, blood spraying out. He did not dodge. Bathing in the divine blood made his killing intent blaze even further. I kindly agreed to help you all merge the two realms, and gave you all a chance to become celestial beings, and this is your repayment to me. Could it be that you all think that I am made of clay, and will allow you to knead and shape as you wish? This is the choice you have made, so you should now suffer the consequences of your actions. Pu. Another several heads were sent flying. Retreat! A heaven demon shouted loudly. Those below heaven demon, all of you retreat, you are merely going to your deaths this way. Run! All the heaven demons felt heartache. These earth demons and black demons were all the pillars of strength of their clans, the future grand elders. And if they could open the doors to the celestial realm, then these people could possibly have a chance of becoming severing mundane ancestors. Watching them killed like they were mere vegetables being harvested, they were enraged yet helpless. In this complete darkness, their reaction speed was innumerable times slower than usual. They could only dispel the attacks directed towards themselves. How could they manage to dispel the attacks directed towards the others in the nick of time? The other demon masters hurriedly fled, but just how much weaker were they as compared to the present Ling Han? They were clearly running in one direction, but no matter how much they ran, they could not run out of this darkness, because their senses had practically lost all significance in this place. They were completely incapable of confirming if they really were running in a straight line. All the heaven demons were also helpless. The present Ling Han's power was seriously superior to theirs, and they were not able to dispel the darkness in their surroundings at all. They could only be very submissive in this battle. Furthermore, Ling Han was very despicable, and was merely targeting the earth demons and black demons. This naturally meant that he was killing one with every strike, and the rate of his massacre was astonishingly efficient. Not even an hour had passed, and all the earth demons and black demons were killed off. The heaven and earth grieved together, culminating in a rain of blood that continued without end. Ling Han, meanwhile, was bathing in the divine blood, the murderous aura bursting forth from his whole body. At this time, he could already fully control the broken wooden sword, making it seem as if this demonic tool had turned into a black demonic dragon, exuding endless demonic chi. One man stood there indomitably, wielding two swords. Even the heaven demons were all rendered speechless. They only felt like they really had created a massive problem, actually becoming enemies with such a freak. If they had known this would happen, why not cooperate peacefully and merge the two realms? Then everyone would have a chance of becoming a celestial being. Now it was great. It was a question whether they would even be able to survive this, what more becoming celestial beings. Now that things have come to this, there is no way out. the heaven demon of the Zhang clan declared coldly. All of you, use your ultimate attacks. Today, if we are unable to kill this brat, he will become an endless problem. All the heaven demons nodded coldly. Even if Ling Han could only use this kind of celestial technique once, that guy had a celestial tool, and it meant that he was invincible. Furthermore, how could it be that this boy's cultivation level would not improve further? Once Ling Han, too, broke through to the Genesis tier, his battle prowess would naturally be stronger than that of other demon masters and saints, who asked him to be capable of merging the regulations of the two realms. This kind of enemy was definitely a deadly problem. Boom, boom, boom. All the heaven demons began to burn their life force, sparing no expense. Of course, they only burnt a sliver of it, increasing their battle prowess to a limited extent. After all, they still had the advantage in numbers. There were so many heaven demons here, and they were the strongest power of the netherworld. Ling Han had clearly evaded them all this while because he was not confident that he could defeat all of them. Now, they were igniting their life force to boost their battle prowess further, which would be enough to suppress him. Boom! These heaven demons were all blowing out continuously, and the darkness was forcibly blown away, returning this place to more or less normal condition. All of the heaven demons had the regulations of great Tao entwined around their bodies, innumerable stars that took the form of Tao manifestations thousands of meters tall encircling them, being insufferably arrogant. They were going all out. Ling Han sneered, "Now it's time for me to send you all on your way." In your dreams. All the heaven demons smirked coldly, moving out to press their hands on Ling Han. In their tumultuous rage, and adding their battle prowess that was blazing to the maximum, their present might was too frightening. One palm strike from them, and they would be able to shatter a great star. The strongest power of the netherworld. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, "Do you all think that this is my strongest battle prowess?" He opened his mouth and spat out a flame. 9 great ancestral flames, one of the 9 great ancestral flames of the celestial realm. What? All the heaven demons paled in shock. Even their Tao manifestations were trembling. They only felt that this flame was too frightening. The slightest contact with it, and they would be burnt to ashes. There was definitely no other possible result. What kind of fire was this? Why was it so terrifying? Ling Han used the 9 heavens flame. This was an immortal flame, though it had not truly matured yet. Otherwise, this was an existence that was equal to a celestial king. Beneath celestial king, who would not die upon contact with it? At present, Ling Han temporarily possessed the cultivation of the consummate level of the Genesis tier, and the might bursting from the 9 heavens flame had also reached the peak of the netherworld, and was even close to the celestial level. This was Ling Han's true fatal weapon. With a flick of Ling Han's finger, multiple finger-like flames shot out, blasting out towards those heaven demons. All the heaven demons hurriedly scampered away. This flame was not something that they could hold up against. They were completely on a different level from it. Run! The heaven demon from the Go clan squeezed out through clenched teeth. There was no longer any significance to continuing the battle. Merely this flame alone was something that they could not dispel, and furthermore, Ling Han still had a celestial tool, and could disappear at any time. This would only be them risking their lives for nothing. All the heaven demons nodded in disappointment. Just think, they were all the top-tier beings of the whole netherworld, yet now they were actually forced to flee by a mere eternal river tier. This was something that they could not accept. But if they did not flee, could it be that they would be staying behind to court death? Planning to leave even now? Ling Han sneered, and with a thought, the 9 heavens flames spread out endlessly, becoming a massive cage that imprisoned all the heaven demons within. "None of you can escape," he stated threateningly. Chapter 1592. Complete Slaughter. The prison of flames began to close in. All the heaven demons looked livid. They did not dare to actually touch these flames. Though the seals of great Tao throbbing on them were badly damaged, their qualitative level overwhelmed the Genesis tier an unknown number of times. They definitely could not be touched. But the prison was closing in, and if they did not think of something, the flames would eventually burn them, and turn them into ashes. Kill this brat. At least we have to force him into the celestial tool, and then the attack will vanish without being dispelled. Attack will always be the best defense. The heaven demons all looked towards Ling Han, seething with killing intent. Ling Han stood proudly, the two swords lowered at either side of him, exuding a frightening killing intent. If you're complaining about not dying fast enough, you can come over, and I will personally send you all on your way. Savage. You are just depending on a celestial tool. If you had not had this good fortune, I would have been able to kill you over 100 times with a single thought. All the heaven demons were fuming mad, and began to attack Ling Han like mad. Ling Han spun both swords in his hands, and held them in defense in front of him. Just as Small Tower had said, his limit was fighting 10 peak stage heaven demons at the same time. Now, though the number of peak stage heaven demons had not reached as many as 10, there were still heaven demons at the early stage, middle stage, and late stage, and using their numbers to compensate, their battle prowess was still astonishing. This was not something that he could stand against. However, Ling Han did not step back. He rapidly brandished the two swords to battle all the heaven demons, and the fiery prison was rapidly closing in as well. Once it completely closed in, all the heaven demons would be wiped out in one go. However, the opposite was also true. As long as the heaven demons managed to kill him, or force him into the Black Tower, the might of the 9 heavens flame would naturally also be removed. Now that things had come to this, all the heaven demons were naturally putting their lives on the line, and burning their life force with no regard for the consequences. Their attacks blasted at Ling Han like mad. This was a situation in which either he would die or it would be they that would be dying. The situation suddenly became incredibly desperate. Everyone was watching dumbfounded. Who would have thought that a situation that was originally just a farce would suddenly develop to this extent? The 3 big shots, Lang Xiaoran, Ouyang He, and Go Hai, were all dumbstruck. They were in the lead of their peers, and were the first among them to become demon masters. Initially, they could claim to be the strongest prodigies, but now, compared with Ling Han, they were far from adequate. In that short while just now, just how many demon masters had he killed? More than 100. And they weren't yellow demons, but black demons, and even earth demons. Moreover, looking at the rate he was going, it seemed as if even heaven demons could be killed by his hand. He could slaughter 20 to 30 of them in one go, and this was definitely something that had never happened before in history, and was likely never going to happen again in future. Now that he had reached this kind of height, as long as they did not want to battle to the death, even heaven demons would find it very difficult to leave a yellow demon alive, what more when it was a bunch of heaven demons. However, an absolutely impossible feat had still happened. The most frightening massacre in the cultivation world was about to play out, and this would affect the many future generations. Kill, kill, kill. All the heaven demons had gone mad. The web of flames had already closed in for less than 30 meters, and in 1 or 2 breaths at most, they would be burned by the immortal flame, turning into ashes. Boom, boom, boom. Powerful attacks blasted out like crazy, and it seemed as if the universe itself was about to explode. Over 20 heaven demons were fighting with their lives on the line at the same time, and they didn't even care if they wounded their own allies. They only asked that they could show their full battle prowess. Pang pang pang. Ling Han was repeatedly hit. At present, though his cultivation level had temporarily reached the consummate level of the Genesis tier, the strength of his physique had not caught up with that level. How could he possibly sustain so many desperate attacks from so many heaven demons? His godly bones were shattered, and he instantly became a figure of blood, making for an extremely tragic scene. Haha, he's definitely about to die. He actually did not dodge, and deluded himself into thinking that he can slaughter us. When we achieved Tao, even your ancestors were nowhere to be found. What wishful thinking! We will send you on your way. All the demon masters were elated, and hurriedly picked up the pace in their attacks, wanting to kill Ling Han. The circumstances changed rapidly in a single instant, and it was a feast for everyone's eyes. Just now, it seemed as if it was Ling Han who would be slaughtering all the heaven demons, and make his own mark in history, but in the blink of an eye, it was now he that was at the end of his line. In the end, what would the conclusion be? Pang 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 pang. Attacks fell like rain, illuminating the whole galaxy, causing this initially dark corner to become incredibly bright as if there were a few dozen suns exploding in this place. Though Ling Han tried his best to parry the attacks, and even killed a few heaven demons, he couldn't hold up to the fact that there were really too many heaven demons. One attack from each of them was enough to drown him in the barrage of attacks. He was throwing up blood like mad, his body completely misshapen. After a frightening sword light swept over him, his head was removed and exploded with a bang. Even his spirit had been erased. "We killed him." When the demon masters saw this, they were instantly overjoyed. With their abilities, they naturally could tell whether someone had died or was still alive. Unfortunately, his spirit has directly exploded, and we were not able to obtain his memories through plucking out his soul. The Celestial King technique. They all cried out. After sacrificing so much in the end, they still didn't manage to obtain the Celestial King technique. How could they accept that? "No!" The heaven demon from the Lang clan suddenly exclaimed in shock. "Why has this prison of flames not vanished?" Going by reason, with Ling Han's death, his technique naturally would completely disappear as well. This brat is not dead yet." All the heaven demons' faces turned pale. He was not dead even when his spirit had been shattered. Boom! A flame waved, exuding a frighteningly high temperature. It seemed capable of melting even divine metal. This might was not inferior in the slightest to the nine heavens flame, and among the flames, a human figure was presently rapidly forming from nothing. The flames waved, and a young man walked out. There were still flames burning on his body, yet they did not wound him at all. It was none other than Ling Han. Rising from the ashes, one of his strongest trump cards. Impossible. Now, even the heaven demons could not accept this. A person whose form and spirit had both been destroyed actually came back to life. Was there any justice left in this world? Yet, they no longer had the time to be surprised. The web of flames had completely closed in. Even if they were heaven demons, so what? Having the nine heavens flame burn their bodies, they immediately erupted in cries of agony. This was an immortal flame, and the slightest touch could burn both the form and spirit. Boom! The immortal flame was merciless, and treated all the heaven demons like fuel, burning them to nothing. Some heaven demons gritted their teeth, and cast off their physical bodies, but it was no use. The immortal flame soared to the skies, and embroiled even their spirits. There had never been anyone that could be strong to this extent. Ling Han's eyes swept over the surroundings, and there was no one that dared make eye contact with him. They all lowered their heads. It was unknown who was the first, but everyone knelt down on a single knee, as if they were worshipping a god of war. Ling Han did not commit any more bloodshed. Those that remained were more or less ants to him. If they sought him out for vengeance in future, he would deal with them then. Chapter 1593. Void Flower. A day later, the effects of the power boost from the Black Tower vanished. Ling Han steered the cloud-piercing shuttle and set out. He was going back to the immortal realm. Before he left, he had a very long conversation with Ouyang Taishan. This respectable elder shared a large amount of experience with him, and there were some things that were very, very useful. For example, why did some prodigies form 2 million, or even 3 million stars, yet still did not break through to the next level? Those like Mo Li and Zhu Ba did not have the ability. It was not because they did not want to. However, for the prodigies of the Forbidden Lands, those that could cultivate to the pinnacle level of the Eternal River tier would definitely be juniors with extremely pure bloodlines, and absolutely could take that crucial step with the aid of their bloodlines. The reason why they had formed 2 million or even 3 million stars was because of a legend. If one could form 10 million stars, and then break through to the Genesis tier, they would gain the approval of the heaven and earth, and obtain unique rewards. After advancing to the severing mundane tier, their power would be exceptional, far surpassing their peers. And to these people from the immortal realm and netherworld, forming 10 million stars before breaking through had another benefit, and that was being able to merge the regulations of the two realms. Of course, this was only a legend. Some also said that this was the true pinnacle level of the Eternal River tier. The reason why this legend was a legend was because there had never been anyone that had formed 10 million stars in the Eternal River tier. Even the prodigies of the Forbidden Lands had not accomplished this. Perhaps there were innumerable geniuses in the celestial realm that could do so, but there were definitely none in the immortal realm and netherworld. Going by Ouyang Taishan's opinion, he hoped that Ling Han could restrain himself for a while, and hold back from breaking through to the Genesis tier so quickly. Instead, he should attempt to break through to the legendary pinnacle level as much as possible. Ling Han would definitely be able to enter into the celestial realm. Thus, it would no longer be enough for him to sweep aside all opposition from the prodigies of the netherworld and immortal realm. He needed to make requirements of himself with the standards of the celestial realm, or he would only be called a prodigy in the celestial realm, at most, and would not be able to become the king tier of a generation. This caused Ling Han to be at a loss. Since he was allowed to know this fact, he definitely would attempt the pinnacle level of 10 million stars, but what about the Empress? At first, 1 million stars would be enough for her to break through, and they would be able to be together from then, and do some things that both of them enjoyed and anticipated. But if they needed to attempt 10 million stars, then the time for breaking through to the Genesis tier would definitely have to be pushed back further. Sigh, for the future of my wife, I'll just have to delay it further. Ling Han sighed. No matter what, she is my wife. Once she missed out on the pinnacle level, that would be a matter that would affect her whole life. Especially when the elites of the celestial realm were completely immortal, as the effects would be even larger. The Empress was an exceptional divine fetus, and cultivated a celestial king technique. Reaching the true pinnacle level of the eternal river tier should be highly possible for her. As for the heavenly phoenix divine maiden, there was no need to even consider this problem. Ling Han discussed this with the Empress, and the two of them agreed to attempt the true pinnacle level of the eternal river tier. The heavenly phoenix divine maiden, meanwhile, was resolute on her own stand. Previously, they had both stepped forward bravely for him. Moreover, he was planning to go back the way he had come, and would definitely be passing by Sea Space Planet anyways. Previously, Ouyang Taishan had brought him along, and they had traveled too quickly. If it was traveling via the cloud-piercing shuttle, the journey would need more or less half a year's time. And this was still because the cloud-piercing shuttle had been upgraded by Hunyo, or the time spent would be 100-fold. After setting the galactic coordinates, there was actually no need for manual control. Thus, Ling Han and his wives basically just stayed in the Black Tower, taking alchemical pills, and comprehended Tao beneath the reincarnation tree, allowing their cultivation level to soar all the way. Every once in a while, Ling Han would still come out to check the situation. Because there were galactic pirates, a galactic journey was not really a very peaceful affair. After about 4 months, when Ling Han exited the Black Tower, he couldn't help but feel surprised. Ahead of them, there was an indescribably colossal flower. It was not just indescribably huge, but even its color could not be described. At least Ling Han did not know what kind of color he could use to describe it. But it was clearly extremely huge, yet it was as if it did not exist at all, and it looked incredibly bizarre. What kind of flower is this? Ling Han searched through his mind, but among the basic medicinal ingredients of the immortal realm, there was none that matched it. He began to make his deductions, and thought about any new species that could be formed through the grafting of different medicinal ingredients. As long as one had a grasp of the basic pharmacology, he would be able to deduce everything. However, Ling Han was still unable to speculate what would grow to look like this after which medicinal ingredients had been grafted together. This was not because the netherworld and immortal realm were different. In fact, these two realms were originally the same, but because of the change of regulations, it was just that some godly medicine could not grow in the netherworld, and some could not grow in the immortal realm. Could it be that this is celestial medicine? Ling Han's heart shook. Though this thought was a little ridiculous, it was not absolutely impossible, because hadn't he, too, obtained a reincarnation tree? Small tower, come and see. Do you know what kind of species this is? Ling Han asked. Void flower, Small Tower immediately replied. This is a celestial flower, but only grows in the cracks of space, so it is not a strange thing for it to appear in the netherworld. Ling Han couldn't help but feel slightly excited. Celestial flower? Are you talking about the kind of celestial flower that will allow you to immediately become a celestial being upon consumption? Small Tower couldn't help but disdainfully retort, in your dreams. There are a great many varieties of celestial flowers, but there are practically none that would directly increase your cultivation level. A so-called celestial flower is nurtured by certain supreme regulations of the celestial realm. Thus, upon consumption, you would be able to comprehend this kind of regulations with it, and there is a chance that you would be able to grasp it. Void flower should be corresponding to the regulations of space. If you are able to grasp it, you will be able to control space even in the celestial realm. Even in the celestial realm, this is a precious treasure. Even a celestial king would probably be interested. Ling Han's eyes shone. Then I definitely have to get my hands on it. Ho ho! Small Tower released a laugh to express its objection. It was beginning to act proud again. The void flower contains the regulations of space. You can see it now, but who knows how far away you are from it? Who knows? Maybe by the time you have traveled half the way to it, the celestial flower would already have been plucked by another. Will you die if you don't attack me? Ling Han asked in displeasure. He adjusted the course of the cloud-piercing shuttle slightly. Ho ho! Small Tower still maintained a half-dead attitude. Xiao, the cloud-piercing shuttle changed direction, and set out in pursuit of the void flower. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 1 month, 2 months. Just like Small Tower had said, this void flower contained the regulations of space. It could be seen from all sides, but in truth, there was an unknown distance separating them. Even Ling Han felt like wanting to give up. He didn't know how long it would take for him to reach it. However, he had already spent 2 months, so he was unwilling to just give up at this time. Thus, he continued his pursuit. Another month later, the space suddenly became extremely strange. He was clearly advancing forwards, but after a short while, he actually realized that he had turned around at some unknown time, and was going back the way he had come. Ling Han was not shocked, but instead felt delighted. Since a strange change had taken place in the space, it meant that he was truly coming closer to the void flower. Chapter 1594. Close at hand. In this place, space was shaped and overlapped, which was extremely strange. Every step Ling Han took forwards could possibly mean that he would be forced to take 3 steps back. It was possible that every step he took backwards would mean taking 10 steps forwards. In this place, vision and divine sense had both lost their meaning, and there was a very strong deceptive quality about it. Only if you have grasped the regulations of space would you be able to possibly find a shortcut, Small Tower said. As for you, you can only spend your time on probing slowly. Furthermore, even if you have found a conclusive pattern in the end, the void flower only needs to make a slight change, and you will have to start back from the beginning. In the celestial realm, celestial kings that have grasped the regulations of time and space are the hardest to deal with. Small Tower was suddenly in high spirits, and took the initiative to explain. However, this kind of celestial king is only troublesome. If one encounters a celestial king that has cultivated the regulations of massacre, then that would possibly be even more unfortunate. With a thought, both your bones and body would be destroyed. Merely in terms of battle prowess, massacre celestial kings could even battle stronger opponents. There was once a massacre celestial king of the 4th heaven that has killed a celestial king of the 5th heaven. However, if one has reached the 9th heaven, then there is no difference whatever regulations one has cultivated. They are all standing at the apex of celestial Tao, so there are no weaker or stronger regulations. The only deciding factor would be the level of grasp over regulations that every celestial king has. Ling Han paused and asked, "Have you eaten something wrong today? Why have you become such a chatterbox?" "I can't bother with you." Small Tower humphed proudly, and ignored Ling Han. It was too bad that Hunyo was not here. This girl seemed to be born with a compass, and there was never any need to worry about getting lost with her around. Ling Han had the Empress come out. Firstly, the Empress was a divine fetus, and perhaps had an inconceivable ability, and secondly, he was also bored. Sharing some loving moments while embracing the Empress was better than him sitting around all by his lonesome, after all. Moreover, the Empress had 9 doppelgangers. Her main body coming out to accompany him would only mean wasting 1/10 of the time used for cultivation. Void flower. The Empress was also stunned. She vaguely knew of some matters of the celestial realm, which came from her bloodline memories, and added with the fact that she had refined Gu Daoi's divine fetus. Her understanding of the celestial realm was in truth much higher than Ling Han's. Some regulations are especially difficult to cultivate, such as time, space, massacre and darkness, because these regulations are not visible in the world, so you would not know where to start to grasp these regulations. You could only hope to grasp them through consuming some specific celestial medicine. Before reaching the 9 heavens of Celestial King, space is definitely one of the strongest regulations. Ling Han nodded. Then I definitely have to obtain this void flower. The two of them cooperated, and spread out their divine sense to sense the changes in the space, slowly progressing in their advance. This was also because their power was insufficient. Otherwise, even if the overlapping space here was even more complicated, so what? They would be able to destroy it with a single blow, and forcibly create a new path. Too bad, they were not celestial beings, so how could they possibly oppose the space that the celestial medicine had disturbed? Thankfully, the two of them were prodigies among prodigies, and with their joint efforts, they still greatly increased the rate of their advance. However, they feared that it would be like what Small Tower had said. If the void flower suddenly changed the regulations of space, then they would have to start back from the beginning. After a few days, a golden pathway spread out. A demon master had arrived. This void flower was too obvious, and even if there were a few galaxies separating them, one would still be able to see it clearly. It would be the real strange thing if it did not draw out a few demon masters. That was a man that looked to be only in his 50s, and he appeared to be very formidable. He didn't even cast another look at the cloud-piercing shuttle. Without entering into the Genesis tier, how could they possibly draw his notice? He, too, spread out his divine sense, wanting to find a path in this complicated space. Ling Han was unafraid of this demon master, not because he still had 2 chances for a power boost, but rather because the space here was too complex. Even if it looked like they were only a dozen over miles away, it was highly possible that a demon master would have to circle around for a few years before he finally reached them. The mystical power of space would cause anyone to exclaim in surprise. Ling Han couldn't help but be greatly interested. If he could grasp the regulations of space, then when the attacks of others were directed at him, he could directly shift them to another place, or even redirect them back at his opponents. And if he attacked, he could instantly breach the distance of space. Then, it would perhaps be possible for him to kill someone even if he was in another galaxy. Too bad the regulations of space were not something that you could directly grasp through observing the heaven and earth, and had to be grasped through consuming celestial medicine. Wang. Multiple golden paths materialized as more and more demon masters had arrived. Clearly, they were all interested in this celestial flower. Another month later, Ling Han suddenly discovered that a flower that was only about a foot tall had appeared in front of him, and had the same appearance as that void flower that towered to the skies. It looked colored, yet seemed to be absent of color at the same time. It was clearly so empty that it looked like it did not exist, yet it was brightly colored and indescribably beautiful at the same time. The true body of the void flower. That flower that brightened the skies and was endlessly colossal was only an image that the void flower had produced as a reflection through space. There was merely about a mile's distance, and the space surrounding the celestial flower was unstable and collapsing. It was possible that a black hole could form at any time. The void flower could be seen, which meant that it had grown fully, and had bloomed brilliantly, which would be followed by wilting. This kind of celestial flower would not produce seeds at all. It was born directly from the regulations of heaven and earth. Even a supreme celestial king would not be able to grow it. It was not just Ling Han. Those demon masters also appeared in the proximity, all their eyes burning. Aside from Ling Han and the Empress, there should be nobody else that knew of the origins of the void flower, yet everyone could deduce that this flower was extraordinary, so they naturally would use all their methods to snatch it. "If you don't want to die, scram!" a demon master exclaimed coldly, using divine sense to communicate his will. At the same time, he showed his cultivation level appropriately black demon. With this exhibition of power, 1/3 of the people immediately turned around and left. A black demon was too strong, and they were completely no match for him. That was merely a saintly medicine after all, and starting a fight with a black demon for it was too unwise. This naturally was because they did not know that the void flower was a celestial flower, or they would definitely make an attempt. "Humph, if I encounter the rest, do not blame me for being merciless," that black demon declared coldly. That is the Desolate Cloud's demon master of Grand Planet. Even among black demons, he is a big shot. However, the space here overlaps, and being close at hand may mean the other end of the universe. He may not be the first to obtain the saintly medicine. A great many demon masters refused to be misled. Though there were still a few yellow demons among them, there was not much difference in terms of speed between demon masters. Thus, the first to get the saintly medicine could completely turn around and leave. A competition for a treasure was naturally using all the means they each had at their disposal. If it was definite that the strongest person would be the one to succeed, then why would there be so many people entering to compete for treasures whenever an ancient site opened up? Ling Han was also unperturbed. For the sake of a celestial medicine, it was completely worth it even if he had to use a power boost from the Black Tower. How lucky, I just happened to set out, And I actually encountered a void flower. A voice rang out. Another dazzling young man appeared here. He was dressed in white cotton, and appeared very plain and simple, but one only had to look at the multiple seals glowing on the cotton robes to know that this clothing was a precious treasure. Chapter 1595. Han Qi. It was a young man, acting as if there was no one else there. He behaved as if this celestial flower was already his. Yet Ling Han was shocked. The speaker might have spoken unconsciously, but it sparked an interest in the listener. The void flower was a celestial variety, and only those from the celestial realm would know its exact name. Even in the Forbidden Lands there should be very, very few people that knew it. This kind of celestial flower was too rare. So many years had passed. Would there still be information about it left in the records of the Forbidden Lands? This person originated from the celestial realm. This was a more possible deduction, but this person was clearly only in the Genesis tier, yet could come from the celestial realm, which meant that there had to be a powerful force backing him. Otherwise, he could not have possibly come here. However, why had someone from the celestial realm come here? Ling Han had once possessed the power of the true consummate level of the Genesis tier, so he could clearly sense that this young man was not a demon master, nor was he a saint. Instead, he was Bota true Genesis tier. A considerable number of demon masters turned to look at that young man. This person was very arrogant, behaving as if there was no one else here, but he was also very young. Being able to become a demon master at this age was extremely extraordinary. This young man swept an eye over the masses, and did not speak, but there was a strong contempt in his eyes. That kind of superiority far surpassed even those from the Forbidden Lands, which allowed Ling Han to completely confirm that he had definitely come from the celestial realm. Ho ho, even a bunch of trash dares to compete with me over a celestial item? The young man shook his head, showing a grin. My name is Han Qi, and as for where I come from, you all are not qualified to know. You all only need to know that I am far above all of you, and should only be worshipped. Get lost immediately, or you all would be killed without mercy. He said the words that the Desolate Clouds Demon Master had said before, yet this time, the Desolate Clouds Demon Master also became a target of disdain, which caused this black demon to involuntarily humph coldly. But there was space separating them. Even if there was seemingly just a gap of a few hundred meters between them, it was possible that the actual distance could be several billion miles. Even if he made a move, he would not be able to wound the other. Just wait and see. Everyone was saying the same line internally. They naturally would not take such a young man seriously, and thought that even if the latter had advanced into the Genesis tier, he should only be a yellow demon at most. They all advanced forwards, heading towards that void flower. Ling Han and Empress Luanxing, too, stepped out of the cloud-piercing shuttle. Speed was not a problem here, so there was no longer any need for the cloud-piercing shuttle. On the other hand, if they were in a flight god tool, it would affect the spreading of their divine sense. In the instant the Empress appeared, even the dark universe seemed to have brightened considerably. Everyone couldn't help but be drawn by the Empress's extraordinary beauty and incomparable grace, without exceptions. Han Qi, too, could not help taking a few looks. He withdrew his gaze, but then looked at her again, his face revealing a stunned expression. Such extraordinary beauty was the first he had seen in his life. His heart throbbed wildly, and he made his decision as well. This kind of beautiful woman should belong to him. He had obtained a celestial medicine as well as an exceptional beauty. Haha. He had initially thought the clan sending him out to this primitive land for a training trip was a tough task, but had not thought it would lead to him having such great fortune. It was clear that there was only about a mile of distance left, which could easily be breached with a casual step, but another 4 days later, they had only advanced about 300 meters. The closer they were to the void flower, the more the space here overlapped. Yet, after another 300 meters, everyone felt their divine sense relax. There was no longer a feeling of being restricted or awkwardness. The space had returned to normal. The void flower swayed gently. It clearly did not release any kind of smell, but everyone felt as if they smelt a fragrance that seeped into their noses, relaxing both their hearts and spirits. Just anyone thinks he can come here. A demon master swept an eye over Ling Han and the Empress, the corner of his lips expressing contempt. However, he then said, "You two just wait on the sidelines and watch. I will be able to guarantee your safety." He had been attracted by the Empress's exceptional grace. Thus he had said such words. Otherwise, it was absolutely impossible for him to be such a busybody. The other demon masters only smiled faintly, and did not say much else. The Empress's beauty made their hearts that they had long sealed away, and in which only remained the desire to pursue the apex of cultivation, restless. Even if they had not said the words that demon master had said, they, too, would be careful when they moved. They would definitely avoid wounding her. Yet Han Chi's face was filled with disdain, and he exclaimed, "All of you, scram. You're just mere ruffians, and you all dare to compete with me over an opportunity. Young man, you are too arrogant," the Desolate Cloud's demon master rebuked coldly. "You are courting death." Han Chi tapped out a finger. There was no earth-shattering scene. Instead, only a blood-colored light flew out, yet its speed was quick to the extreme. It had just been shot out when it already arrived in front of the Desolate Cloud's demon master. Pooh! The bloody light directly penetrated the Desolate Cloud's demon master's forehead, and then flew out from the back of his head. A spurt of blood sprayed out, and the eyes of this demon master immediately dimmed, his vitality dispersing. There was no gravity in space. He still maintained his standing posture, yet his limbs were weakly drooping down. An air of grief diffused in the heaven and earth, and rain of droplets of blood streamed, feeling pity for the passing of a demon master. Everyone was startled at first, which was followed by great shock. That was a black demon, and he had actually been insta-killed by a ridiculously young man. This was like the stuff of dreams, causing them to all doubt their eyes. Had they fallen into an illusion? "I told you guys to scram, and you didn't, then don't blame me for starting a massacre," Han Chi stated coldly. Hong, he released his own aura without reservation. It was indescribably terrifying, like a landslide or a tsunami. "HHHH Heaven Demon!" a demon master uttered in a trembling voice, filled with fear. Initially, even yellow demons needed not fear a heaven demon too much, because everyone's speed was about the same. Even if I was no match for you, I would still be able to flee, right? And if you pushed me too far, I would target your descendants, friends, and disciples. Even a heaven demon would feel much of a headache. Thus, unless they were determined to kill the other, even heaven demons would give some face to yellow demons. After all, they were all mighty figures that stood at the Genesis tier. But the situation now was different. The space here overlapped, and coming here would already take a lot of time. If they returned, it would take a similar amount of time, which was enough to allow a heaven demon to calmly and easily kill them over a few hundred times. This was a state of utter despair. A few people focused on the void flower. They believed that the overlapping of space here was because of this strange flower. If they could pluck this flower, the space should return to normal. Then they would be able to break into a run and flee. They were sure that even a heaven demon could not possibly catch up to them. Ho ho, just give up such unnecessary delusions. Han Chi laughed loudly. A white-colored mist surged out from him, instantly enshrouding the entire area. Everyone suddenly felt as if some spell had been placed on their bodies. They couldn't even move a single finger. They were done for. Chapter 1596. Visitor from the Celestial Realm. Han Chi stood with his arms crossed behind his back, looking as if he did not take these demon masters seriously at all. In his eyes, these were merely ants. So what if he had defeated them? Was there any need to feel especially proud of it? Thus, he was also merciless in his strikes. With a tap of a finger, a demon master's head immediately exploded into bits, and his spirit was also ground to nothing at the first instant. I despise this place. As he withdrew his finger, he looked at the gathered masses, admiring the looks of fear on their faces. Where I originally was, that was a true holy land of cultivation, but the elders in my clan deliberately sent me to this arduous and primitive place to train me. I miss my old friends dearly. I wish to return to my original life, but I can only stay in this place and be with such smelly pigs like you all in the same galaxy. Han Chi paused and continued, I haven't started complaining yet, so what right do you all have to? Pah! He tapped out another finger, and a second demon master's head tragically exploded. However, the heavens have finally seen my plight. He turned to look at Empress Luan Xing. They gifted an exquisite beauty to me, as well as a celestial medicine. Haha, Then I will gladly accept. He stretched out his hand, grabbing out at the Empress. Small tower. Ling Han said softly in his mind. Wang, suddenly, a frightening energy surged out of his body, immediately pushing his cultivation level up to the consummate level of the Genesis tier. He moved, his fist rushing towards Han Chi's palm. Pang, that palm was immediately shattered into pieces. Han Chi was slightly startled. He raised his hand, and saw that the part of his hand between his thumb and forefinger had split. Blood was gushing out, crystalline like jade. He couldn't help but look at Ling Han and said, "You are slightly odd. You are clearly only in the Eternal River tier, yet suddenly possess the cultivation level of the peak stage of the consummate level of the Genesis tier. This aura, you have actually merged the regulations of the two realms. You are not from this place." The ancient realm had already split into two, and the regulations had also accordingly split into two. It was eternally impossible for anyone to be capable of grasping the regulations of the two realms simultaneously and merge them, and open the doors to the celestial realm from there. Thus, there was only one possibility why someone could merge the regulations of the two realms just like him. He had similarly come from the celestial realm. These words were heard by the other demon masters, and all of them were filled with hope. The peak stage of the consummate level of the Genesis tier? Wasn't that a peak stage heaven demon? Then, as long as Ling Han was willing to save them, they would not die. Ling Han released his aura, which rushed towards the white mist. However, this was a secret technique of the Han clan, and definitely not something that mere aura could oppose. It only allowed Ling Han himself to regain his freedom of movement. Ha 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 ha. Han Chi laughed loudly. Since we both come from the celestial realm, how could a celestial technique that you don't recognize as one be something that your aura could overcome? Which city and which clan are you from? Tell me to avoid dying in my hands by mistake. He was probing into Ling Han's identity here. If Ling Han's background in the celestial realm was huge, then he would be merciful. After all, those who were sent to this place to train would definitely not be the abandoned pawns of the clan. Instead, only those prodigies that were definitely prized would get such an opportunity. Thus, Han Chi had to first confirm that the force supporting Ling Han was not something that he could trifle with. He was arrogant, but not stupid at all. Otherwise, he would not have possibly been sent into the ancient realm to be trained. All the demon masters were confused by his words. What kind of place was this celestial realm? Some powerful organization of the netherworld. Ling Han smiled calmly and answered, "Dark Moon City, Ding Clan." He did not mind drawing some aggression to the Ding clan at all. Han Chi pondered for a while, then involuntarily revealed an expression of disdain, and said, "So it is merely a single-star small city." He did not have any more reservations. Though he had not heard of this Ding clan before, he knew what grade the Dark Moon City most likely was. Even a severing mundane tier could be called a senior here. It could not be mentioned on equal terms with the Han clan at all. However, he was feeling a little curious as well. A severing mundane tier ancestor would at most only be able to enter himself into the ancient realm. He should not be able to send others in. Forget it, there was no need to mind. In any case, in front of the Han clan, even severing mundane tier was insignificant. Why don't you measure your own worth? You actually dare challenge me? Han Chi smirked coldly. He had confirmed in his mind, so he naturally did not have the slightest bit of reservations any longer. He stretched out his right hand and grabbed out at Ling Han. Ling Han used darkness of the paramount night, and an endless darkness spread out, turning into the purest darkness that blocked all the senses. The white mist that enshrouded the area immediately dispersed, and was invaded and swallowed by the darkness. However, it did not completely disappear. Instead, it eventually turned into a battle of equals, both occupying half the territory. Ha! Both Ling Han and Han Chi were slightly surprised because neither of them had thought that the other's power was actually capable of matching their own. Ling Han soon felt relieved. This was only the power boost from the Black Tower, which allowed him to possess the power and grasp over regulations that belonged to the consummate level of the Genesis tier. But in truth, this was not Ling Han's true strength. Believed that he would be able to be even stronger when he actually reached this level. Yet Han Chi was truly stunned. Just how powerful was his background? The Han clan was notable even in the celestial realm, and as he was a well-known figure among the younger generation of the Han clan, His battle prowess should definitely be capable of overwhelming all his peers. Yet Ling Han actually managed to match him? This was something that he could not accept. Just about the same in terms of power and cultivation technique. He immediately broke out into a cold smirk. Battle prowess was not defined by such fixed figures. Otherwise, what was the point of battle in the first place? They just needed to compare their figures. Ling Han smiled calmly. This was also what he wanted to say. Possessing such a powerful weapon like the Nine Heavens Flame, in a battle of equal cultivation levels, who would be able to match him? You at least would have to have the qualifications of a celestial king. All of you step back. I will guarantee your safety, he stated calmly. Because darkness of the Paramount Night was opposing that white mist, those demon masters also regained their freedom, and Ling Han's words were directed at them. All the demon masters felt rueful. At first, there was one demon master that had something similar to Ling Han and the Empress. At the time, it was an inevitable and right thing to do in their eyes, yet they had never imagined that not too much time would pass, and the target of these words would be changed to them. Furthermore, they had to accept this kindness too. Times changed quickly, really very quickly. Humph, whether they step back or not, the result will be the same, and your only destiny is death. Han Qi declared in objection. He had exposed a secret of the celestial realm, and these people were fated to die. Ice mist, he called out softly. The white mist immediately turned into an eerie air of ice, which posed a great threat even to those in the consummate level of the Genesis tier. All around, even if those demon masters had Ling Han standing in front of them, they were still shivering. The gap in their cultivation level was a little too wide, so how could they possibly face the consummate level of the Genesis tier head-on? Ling Han pressed a hand on Empress Luan Xing, and drew her into the Black Tower. Han Qi was a powerful foe, and he had to ensure that those demon masters behind him did not take advantage of an opening to make a move on the Empress. One should not lack vigilance at any time. He did not want to be filled with regret if anything happened. Cold mist. Ling Han smiled softly. The other definitely would not have imagined that he had a source power within him, which was the Nine Heavens Flame. Immortal Flame. Chapter 1597. Battling Han Qi. Hong blazing white flames surged in Ling Han's body, and there were seals of great Tao throbbing on them. Han Qi's expression was filled with disdain. A mere severing mundane tier clan. Just how strong could the celestial technique he cultivated actually be, then? Just look, those seals of great Tao were not even complete, and he still planned to oppose him like this. He was having delusions. But he immediately discovered there was something off because the ice mist that he had released was presently melting, and the situation had returned to a tie between himself and Ling Han. This. His face was filled with shock. His celestial technique had actually really been resisted. How could that be? The other seals of great Tao were not complete, and even then, it was enough to oppose him. Then if they were complete, would he still be a qualified match? This was the descendant of a severing mundane clan. Han Qi was filled with disbelief. He couldn't help but ponder. Actually, aside from entering into the ancient realm to train, he had another mission, and that was to seek out the treasures left behind by those celestial kings that had previously been defeated and died in the ancient realm. In that great turmoil, only a very few lower-tier forces managed to leave the celestial realm in a complete condition, like severing mundane tier. Above severing mundane tier, every force experienced a blood purge. At most only a few minor characters managed to fortunately escape to the ancient realm. Aside from them, there were the celestial kings. The celestial kings were too powerful. Even if they were ganged up on, they would have some means to escape. But if they stayed too long in the ancient realm, so what if they were celestial kings? Their lifespan would still end. Though there were not many celestial kings that had fallen into the ancient realm, it had still drawn the attention of a great many clans of the celestial realm. Han Qi was one of them. While he was training, he was searching for the whereabouts of the remaining treasures of the celestial kings. He looked at Ling Han, and a guess rose up in his heart: could this guy have gotten the inheritance of a celestial king? If that was not the case, how could the technique of a mere severing mundane clan be capable of comparing to him? Haha, this was really a golden opportunity bestowed by the heavens. He showed a menacing expression. He had really earned a lot this time. Celestial medicine, an exquisite beauty, a celestial king technique. He had gained all three of these in a single go. Don't show that kind of expression. You are having delusions, Ling Han stated calmly. You should be down to earth. As for what you should not think of, it is best not to even have the slightest thought of it. Ha ha! Han Qi roared with laughter. You are really quite arrogant. I'm just average, I am only speaking facts. Ling Han shrugged. Then let me see, would it be your mouth that is stronger, or your power that is stronger? Han Qi moved, and had already charged towards Ling Han. He shot out a punch. Wang, innumerable seals appeared, entwined around his fists, and a silvery river which was covered with stars appeared behind him. He focused on cultivating the regulations of ice. As this punch shot out, it seemed as if the space itself was about to freeze. It was incredibly frightening. Ling Han was unafraid, and raised his fist to exchange blows with Han Qi. Pang, pang, pang. The two of them exchanged over a dozen solid blows, and it was hard to decide who was the stronger of the two. They were both at the consummate level of the Genesis tier, and had both grasped the regulations of two realms. There was not much difference in their battle prowess, either. However, Ling Han's brow was tightly frowning. In such an exchange of blows, he discovered that his physique was close to its limit. It should be known that the power boost from the Black Tower only increased his cultivation level, but his physique still remained on its original level. Meanwhile, Han Qi had come from the celestial realm. The amount of cultivation resources that he obtained must be astonishing. In terms of physique, he actually also had a very high achievement. It practically could match godly metal of the same level. This was far inferior to the indestructible Heaven's Scroll, but it was extremely nature-defying in the present situation. He was practically invincible. Ha 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 ha, what right does a piece of trash that came from a small city like you have to compare with our Han clan? Han Qi laughed madly, his fists continuing to strike. He was aggressive in his attacks. He intended to defeat Ling Han in a single breath. The gap in their cultivation levels was really too big. His physique was far from being a match. Ling Han shook his head internally, and no longer confronted the other party with mere fists. He used the lightning sword technique. Xiao 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 xiao. Sword Qi danced out, gloriously changing direction in the skies. He aggressively broke through, breaking out of Han Qi's barrage of blows. He shot out a fist, and Sword Qi turned into a flash of light that stabbed directly at Han Qi's face. Ice freezes the 9 heavens. Han Qi humphed lightly. The white mist suddenly condensed and solidified in front of him, becoming a defense that was akin to a city wall. On the ice wall, seals of great Tao had appeared. This was an indestructible defense. Pang! The sword light landed, yet only left behind a small crack on the first layer of the ice wall. You can't even penetrate the first layer of my 9-layered armor, and you think you can wound me? Han Qi sneered. I really have no idea where you have gained your courage from to actually dare fight me. Ling Han humphed, and used the 9 heavens flame. Fiery flames began to burn on his fists, and it was like that icy wall immediately melted like a snowball had fallen into boiling soup. What? Han Qi was astonished. And that was not the last of it. The 9 heavens flame showed its might. Wherever Ling Han's fist passed, one layer after another, the icy wall was instantly broken through by Ling Han like it was made out of paper, and he arrived right in front of Han Qi. Han Qi cried out involuntarily and paled. What kind of celestial technique was this? It could actually overcome the 9 underworlds ice mist of the Han clan so easily? At first, he had thought that no matter how awesome Ling Han was, he would only be able to penetrate 2 to 3 ice walls at most. But he had never imagined that when that flame appeared, it would be like a hot knife through butter. He had no choice but to retreat. That flame was too frightening. He had a feeling that if it landed on him directly, the ice element regulations in his body would be melted completely. Damn it! This had to be a Celestial King technique, an immortal flame that had been produced through cultivating a Celestial King celestial technique. Otherwise, how could it so easily restrain the 9 underworlds ice mist? It should be known that the Han clan was the ruler of a large 3-star city, and had an ancestor in the Immortal Palace tier, who was an unknown number of times stronger than the Severing Mundane tier. 9 underworlds ice spike. Han Qi's figure swept out. After avoiding facing Ling Han's attack head-on, he rapidly began his counterattack. Tapping out a finger, the white mist solidified into a spear of ice that stabbed towards Ling Han's ribs from the right. If this spear hit its target, even a great star would explode from the impact. It contained all the power and regulations grasped by an elite at the peak stage of the consummate level of the Genesis tier, so its destructive power was indescribably frightening. Ling Han greeted the attack with a punch of his own. He shot out a fiery flame that formed a divine sword that slashed out at the ice spear. Pang! The spear and sword collided, and red and white spread out. This was a conflict between fire and ice, as well as a collision between two types of regulations, which caused even the world to become two different colors. Those demon masters managed to escape in the nick of time, but their faces were still charred bulk, and icicles hung from parts of their bodies after they were affected by the aftermath from the collision. And this was still because they had advanced to the demon master level. If they had only been in the Eternal River tier, that one shock wave would have been enough to eliminate all of them. Clang! A sharp sound that could shake the whole universe rang out, and the sword of fire sliced the spear of ice in half. It aggressively counterattacked, and slashed out at Han Chi. Chapter 1598. The Strongest Clash of the Netherworld. Ling Han and Han Chi battled fiercely. To be honest, both deserved the moniker of elite. One was a king tier that had slowly progressed from a small world, whereas the other was a prodigy of the celestial realm. Whether in terms of physique, celestial technique, or power, their strength was of the highest tier in the ancient realm. Their clash was fierce and exciting, a battle that was worthy of being recorded in the history books to be passed down through the ages. Those demon masters were all watching with shock, dumbfounded. Two young people, and either of them had been born innumerable years later than them, yet they surpassed them despite their late start, leaving them far behind in their dust. In the wider world, there would always be people more talented than them. They were rueful, and no longer had any thoughts of coveting the void flower in the slightest. At present, they only had one thought, and that was to leave this place safely. Some had already begun to retreat, but there were also some that had stayed behind. Firstly, they wanted to witness this battle that could possibly become the most powerful clash in the history of the Netherworld, and secondly, it was also a form of support for Ling Han. If you saved me, yet I did not have the courage to cheer you on from the sidelines, then what right would I still have to claim to be an elite demon master? Ling Han had truly encountered a powerful opponent. He did indeed possess a considerable number of celestial techniques, but it was the same for Han Chi as well. Furthermore, he was the descendant of an immortal palace tier-level force, so the celestial techniques that he grasped were stronger than Ling Han's. Whether it was the tide of the ages or darkness of the paramount night, they both did not have much of an advantage over him. Thankfully, because neither of them had stepped into celestial level, they were unable to show the true might of the celestial techniques. Thus, though there was a difference between their celestial techniques, they had been weakened to the Genesis tier level, so the difference was not too big either. Not bad, not bad. You are quite strong, and worthy of me showing my true abilities. Han Chi laughed loudly, and with a tap of his right hand, an icy frost condensed, and actually formed a figure of ice. It looked similar to himself, yet was at least 100 times bigger than he actually was. Frost of 1,000 shadows, he muttered softly, and tapped out repeatedly with his right hand. One after another, giants of ice appeared in quick succession. The regulations of ice were entwined all over them, and Great Tao had formed a river that flowed in their bodies. Kill him! With one command from Han Chi, all the giants of ice moved their legs, and charged towards Ling Han. Ling Han was unafraid. With a shake of his hands, a blade of fire appeared in each of his hands, formed by the 9 heavens flame. He charged towards the giants of ice, and with a slash of his sword, one giant of ice would be melted into water vapor. Look out! Han Chi also charged over. He formed seals with his hands, and pressed them down on Ling Han. Slice apart. Ling Han stimulated heaven's might, which charged out at Han Chi as well. Han Chi couldn't help but be shocked. His power had actually been weakened by around 2 stars. In a clash of this grade, could he afford a gap of 2 stars of power? He immediately roared out, and the patterns of Great Tao in his body glowed, resisting this kind of impact. Ling Han nodded internally. As expected of a prodigy of the celestial realm, this move had no effect on him. He did not mind though. Although Han Chi could resist his heaven's might, the giants of ice he had summoned could not. They were all destroyed after sustaining more than 100 strikes that contained the might of the nine heavens flame from him. I should infuse the nine heavens flame into the lightning sword technique, Ling Han said inwardly. The sword Dao that he practiced would include everything in this world. As long as something was useful, he would stuff it into his sword technique. It was like getting rid of the weeds and keeping the flowers, only leaving behind the portion that possessed the strongest might. He used the lightning sword technique, and infused the might of the nine heavens flame into it. This was not the power of regulation, but rather a true flame. Even in the celestial realm, it could be called a precious treasure, and was one of the 9 great ancestral flames. Thus, infusing this nine heavens flame into the lightning sword technique was different from what he had done before. As Ling Han battled, he pondered. At present, he was using both at the same time, so there was naturally a sliver of might of the nine heavens flame embedded in his sword technique, but he was still quite far off from allowing the nine heavens flame to show its full might. If he could merge them better, his battle prowess naturally would increase further. Hang on. Since the nine heavens flame was the power of his life force, then why did he have to deliberately merge them? This was his own power in the first place. Ling Han couldn't help but grin. He had taken the wrong path, and in truth, the answer was extraordinarily simple. Since the nine heavens flame was the source of his power, he only had to directly stimulate it, and then use the lightning sword technique. The two would then be perfectly merged together. He had fallen into a common misconception in his thought process, and thought that the nine heavens flame was an external power. In truth, from the instant he refined the nine heavens flame, it had already become a part of his body. Ha ha ha! He laughed loudly, and suddenly flicked out a finger. Xiao, a sword light shot out. It was indescribably fast, and had instantly arrived right in front of Han Chi. There was a fiery flame wrapped amidst the sword light. Han Chi paled in shock. He was not wary of Ling Han's other techniques, and feared only that flame. At first he wanted to throw out a punch and dispel this sword light, but when he saw that fiery flames were wrapped within, he immediately dismissed the thought. Shwa, a cold light flashed, and a flag appeared in Han Chi's hand. It was only about a foot tall, and appeared slightly strange, being grasped in his hand. The flag was a little old, and there was a fierce beast that spat out a cold mist painted on it. Ling Han appeared slightly surprised. It seemed as if the fierce beast on that flag had suddenly come to life. It spat out a mouthful of cold frost, which held back his sword light in the nick of time. Otherwise, if the blow had landed on Han Chi, the nine heavens flame would have long turned him into ash. You should be proud of yourself for being able to force me to use the 9 underworlds frost water flag. Han Chi declared coldly. But now you may go to your death. He waved the flag and wang, the flag grew in the wind, and actually became a battle flag that was as tall as 9 meters. He used the flagpole like a long spear, and swept and stabbed it at Ling Han, while the fierce beast on the flag continued to spit out cold air, making it seem as if the whole galaxy had been sunk into a bottomless cave of ice. So what if they were demon masters? All the elites in the area were shivering, and involuntarily wrapped their arms around themselves. They were forced to burn their flame of life in resistance. Otherwise, their flame of life would be extinguished. Ling Han was not reserved, either. He drew out the divine demon sword and the broken wooden sword, and he parried the battle flag using both swords. Though the broken wooden sword was a level 20 demonic tool, it could not bear the might of the 9 heavens flame. On the other hand, though the divine demon sword was only level 17, it could bear the flames. However, the sword's blade had turned crimson red from the extreme heat, and even the patterns on it seemed close to melting. Ling Han was unworried. These patterns were only formed through the large volume of godly metal that the divine demon sword had swallowed, and were not formed by the sword itself. The celestial tool was already celestial king level in the first place, and so was the 9 heavens flame. With these two combined together, it was unbelievably powerful. Even if the divine demon sword was far from reaching the level of celestial tool, and the 9 heavens flame was also very immature, don't forget that Han Chi presently was also only in the Genesis tier. Chapter 1599. Conveniently shifting the blame. Han Chi felt immense regret. He had drawn out the battle flag to turn the dispiriting situation around with it, but he had never imagined that Ling Han was even stronger than he was. The treasured swords he possessed were even stronger, making his disadvantage become more and more obvious. "Damn it!" he roared in a low voice and suddenly turned around to flee. He was no match, so what was the point of battling to the death? However, the space here overlapped greatly. When he ran over, he had spent countless time, and it was the same if he wanted to leave. He would have to spend a great amount of time to calculate and deduce the path to leave, but where would he get such time in the present situation? Ling Han did not personally pursue him, but he slashed out with his sword, which tore a rip into space and reached right in front of Han Chi. This scared Han Chi half to death. What was going on here? Ling Han was also surprised, but then he recalled that both the Divine Demon Sword and Nine Heavens Flame were objects that would be Celestial King level in future, and they naturally had their own unusual spots. It was normal that the Void Flower was unable to imprison their might. After all, the Void Flower only contained the regulations of space, which would tempt a Celestial King. It did not mean that it itself was capable of opposing a Celestial King. Pooh! The attack reached him, and Han Chi was forced to use the battle flag to parry the blow. The consequence was that the fiery blade struck the flag, and left behind a charred mark. Han Chi almost died of heartache. In the Celestial Realm, level 20 godly material was the highest grade, and above that there was only celestial material. However, celestial material was difficult to obtain. Even the Grand Elders of the Han Chi could not possibly have such material. What more he? Even a great many celestial kings were unable to possess celestial material. Then what were they to do? The celestial realm had its own ways, and that was to use level 20 godly material as a base, and continuously meld it together to increase the grade of the godly material. In the celestial realm, the godly material produced from this kind of melding was termed pseudo-celestial material, and there were a total of 5 grades, which were respectively from 1 to 5 stars. 1 star was the poorest grade, while 5 stars was the highest grade. This flag of his actually didn't even reach 1 star. At most, it could only be considered half a star. Yet, he had endlessly used his own power to create it through refining, and an elder of his clan had painted a fierce beast on the flag so that it could use celestial techniques. In future, he would infuse more godly material so that this flag would become stronger as he became stronger, but he had not been in the ancient realm for that long, and this 9 Underworlds Frost Water flag was already damaged, which struck him with heartache. Ling Han laughed loudly. Han Chi was really considered to have driven himself into a dead corner. Now that he was trapped in overlapping space, there was no possibility for him to fight back. He would only be able to sustain being attacked. "You asked for this." Ling Han endlessly struck out with his sword. Xiao xiao xiao. One after another, sword chi tore into space, and madly barraged at Han Chi. He had to take advantage of this time to deal with Han Chi. Otherwise, after one day, the effects of the power boost from the Black Tower would vanish, and by then, it would be he that would have to hide into the Black Tower. Han Chi roared in fury. He brandished the battle flag to parry the attacks, but after each time he managed to successfully parry a blow, the flag would be torn and charred a bit, and as the damage accumulated, this flag had become battered. "You have gone too far," he called out loudly. Our Han clan is the overlord of the 9 Underworld city. That is a large 3-star city, and definitely not something that your Ding clan can trifle with. "Come bite me." Ling Han objected. The reason he had revealed the name of the Ding clan was to create some trouble for the Ding clan. Since he had promised Hu Yu to deal with the Ding clan, he naturally did not mind creating some trouble for the Ding clan before he himself even went to the celestial realm. "Why, you will regret this." Han Chi squeezed out through gritted teeth. Even a ruffian from a mere small 1-star city dared to trifle with him. When he brought this news back to the Han clan, the other would definitely cry. "That is a matter of the future, and now I will kill you first," Ling Han declared coldly. This guy actually dared make a move on his wife. This was something unforgivable. Sword light blazed, and danced throughout the skies. Han Chi really couldn't hold on any longer. When the battle flag was completely reduced to just the flagpole, he, too, had fallen into desperate straits. He was repeatedly struck by the sword chi, and no matter how much he channeled the 9 Underworlds Frost to resist, it was useless. The combined destructive power of the Divine Demon Sword and the 9 Heavens Flame was too frightening. It corroded his physical body and harshly destroyed his vitality. Pa! Han Chi's physical body was destroyed, and his spirit flew out, becoming a ball of light that was only about the size of a fist. That was a human figure that looked exactly like Han Chi. Sword Chi and the flames were still spreading out, but a serene light appeared, and forcibly blocked both the sword Chi and the flames. This serene light was incredibly strong, and forcibly tore a rip into space. It wrapped around Han Chi's spirit, and with a flash, it had disappeared completely. The space closed up again, as if Han Chi had never existed at all. Ling Han's heart shook. This definitely was not Han Chi's own power. It was too strong, and had exceeded the level of the Genesis tier. It is the protective measure that the Grand Elders of the Han clan have placed on him. Once his physical body is destroyed, and his spirit is endangered, this energy would appear and bring his spirit back to the celestial realm. That will do as well. At present, the Han clan only knows that I am a member of the Ding clan, so they naturally will just go and make trouble for the Ding clan. It is not advisable to stay here any longer. I will leave as soon as I pluck the void flower. Ling Han immediately turned around and returned to the side of the void flower. He stretched out his hand to pluck it. However, the space by the side of the void flower was collapsing. This had terrifying destructive power that could break and shatter everything that was trapped within. Thankfully, this was the Netherworld. The strongest power would only be the peak stage of the Genesis tier, and Ling Han just happened to be standing presently on this cultivation level. Patterns of great Tao entwined around his hand, resisting the power of the collapsing space. Then, he grabbed the void flower and stored it in the Black Tower. Once the void flower had been plucked, the space in the surrounding area immediately returned to normal. There was no longer any collapse or overlapping of space. Ling Han smiled slightly. With a thought, a golden path spread out. Since he presently had the power of the Genesis tier, he naturally had to make good use of it. All the demon masters watched as Ling Han disappeared, and then breathed a sigh of relief. They were naturally worried as well, fearing that Ling Han would move to kill them to prevent them from leaking his secrets. Only once they could no longer sense any sign of Ling Han were they finally relieved, and hurriedly spread out their own golden paths and departed. On the other side, Han Chi was wrapped by that serene light, broke through the barrier to the celestial realm, and entered into a completely new heaven and earth. The serene light brought his spirit over numerous hills and streams. After several days, it arrived in the middle of a city. This city was astonishingly huge, and could match any great star of the immortal realm. Humph! An incredibly powerful being released a sound of displeasure. He stretched out his hand and pressed down, and Han Chi's spirit appeared in front of him. What is going on? It has only been a few days, and you actually had your body destroyed, and was forced to use the boost in your body? In reply to 8th Elder, I was wounded by someone who is similarly from a celestial realm clan. I suspect that person has obtained the inheritance of a celestial king. Han Chi explained. What? That powerful 8th Elder stood up abruptly, and as his aura spread out, it was as if the heavens themselves were creeping in front of him. He was indescribably strong. What clan is he descended from? Dark Moon City, Ding clan, Han Chi hurriedly replied. Dark Moon City? The 8th Elder paused slightly, and then couldn't help but look furious. You didn't even manage to defeat a descendant of a mere small one-star city. Han Chi's expression was filled with grievance. In reply to the 8th Elder, that boy has obtained the inheritance of a celestial king, and that was why I was no match. 8th Elder waved his sleeve and said, I will personally visit the Dark Moon City, and have them hand over the detailed information about that boy. Strange, mere severing mundane tier actually has the ability to send another into the ancient realm? He frowned. This was a little unimaginable. Chapter 1600. Banishing Technique. Ling Han traveled on the Golden Path. This was his first time journeying through this method, which was very refreshing to him. However, after merely half a day, the power in his body disappeared, and he had no choice but to stop and draw out the cloud-piercing shuttle to continue his journey. And using the cloud-piercing shuttle to commence his galactic journey meant that he had no need to pay attention all the time as long as there were galactic coordinates in place. He entered into the Black Tower, and called the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden and the Empress over. Now that he had something good, he naturally had to share it. The two women were his wives, so whatever he had, there naturally was a share that belonged to them as well. However, the heavenly phoenix divine maiden was the first to shake her head. I do not want to be distracted. My current target is to attempt to break through to a higher cultivation level, and if I also cultivated the regulations of space, it would not be a good thing for me. The Empress also shook her head and said, I haven't completely grasped the celestial technique contained in my bloodline, and I have no wish to be greedy and never satisfied at this time either. It is enough for you yourself to consume this void flower. Why are the two of you acting so reserved with me? Ling Han asked, smiling. Skills would never be a burden. What more when it was the regulations of space? The Empress smiled and explained, the regulations of space that one can grasp with one void flower are limited, and if it is shared among three, it is possible that none of the three will be able to grasp it. Thus, go ahead and consume it. Sister Feng's target is breaking through to the Genesis tier, while I am aiming for the pinnacle level of the Eternal River tier. As for you, try your best to increase your abilities in a battle of equals as much as possible. Ling Han thought for a moment, and then replied, all right. I think we would obtain more void flowers, flame flowers, or the like in future, so I will take this one first. Ho ho! Small Tower made a timely appearance, and gave him a cold laugh. Ling Han ignored it. The proud tower seemed fonder and fonder of showing its presence recently. He arrived underneath the reincarnation tree, and plucked a petal of the void flower before he tossed it into his mouth. This was an unusual object nurtured by the heaven and earth. Even the Black Tower had no means to cultivate it, or he could get a few hundred to over 1,000, and everyone by his side would be able to cultivate the regulations of space. He chewed, and multicolored light immediately surged in his mouth, multiple seals of great Tao throbbing. Ling Han hurriedly closed his mouth tightly. If he opened his mouth at this time, it was definite that a great amount of the medicinal effects would escape, and that would really be a great loss. He could not bother with chewing any more, and directly swallowed it into his stomach. Hong, these patterns of great Tao flowed in his body, and finally appeared in his mind, forming an empty world. A world, a sea of regulations. This world was not complete. Ling Han quickly ate another petal, and continued to patch up this world. He ate one petal after another, and did not even waste the stem. Finally, in his mind, there appeared a broken world, but compared to the beginning, it was considerably more complete. He continued his comprehension. There was a time limit to the medicinal effects. If he could not grasp it for a long time, this world would disappear from his mind. Space was a very, very large concept, and included a great many different branches, such as tearing open space, instant movement to another location, diverting attacks, and assimilating the items around oneself to vanish without a trace. They all similarly belong to the regulations of space. The void flower grew in the gaps between space, and was formed from absorbing the regulations of heaven and earth, but exactly which regulation of space it would form was indefinite. This would depend on one's luck. Similar regulations of space would vary in strength and practical application. What Ling Han most wanted was to be able to move objects, or even divert attacks. This was an incredibly powerful ability. If he didn't have that, it would also be good if he could instantly teleport himself. But his luck was not that good. The regulations contained in this void flower were about creating a separate dimension, and the time was considerably short. What use was that? To store items? But this space was not stable at all, and it could only be maintained for the time of a single breath. If he placed anything in, it very soon would fall back out. Ling Han smiled bitterly. This ability was a little useless. Hold on. He paused suddenly. More importantly, could this space accommodate living creatures? If it could, then it would be very useful. When my enemy's attack reached me, I would be able to dodge into this separate dimension, and calmly avoid this strike. Then, he would first have to grasp this regulation, and only then would he be able to start experimenting to see whether it was possible to use it to store living creatures or not. At this time, one day underneath the reincarnation tree was equivalent to 10 years. The medicinal effects of the void flower could continue for about 3 days, which also meant that he had about 30 years' time to comprehend it. He sat down in a cross-legged position, and did not release the slightest sign of aura, as if he himself was an old tree. This was because he had withdrawn all his energy, and completely poured it into comprehension of this regulation. 3 days passed, but for Ling Han, it was a whole 30 years' time spent comprehending the regulation of space. He opened his eyes and broke into a grin. He had already grasped these regulations of space. Unfortunately, the regulations that this void flower contained were extremely limited in the first place. Let's give it a try. Ling Han exited the Black Tower, and then casually summoned out a wild hog. He pressed down his right hand, and this wild hog amazingly vanished. It had been temporarily thrown into another dimension. It had merely taken the time for a single breath. This wild hog appeared once more, and released frightened cries. The previous experience was much too frightening for it. It had suddenly been isolated in an unfamiliar space, almost terrified to death. It can accommodate living creatures, or I could not have been able to take it into the separate dimension, Ling Han concluded. Let's try it out again. He threw the wild hog into the separate dimension again, and then shot out a punch at that spot with his full strength. After a single breath, the wild hog's sharp cry was heard once more, and it was completely unharmed. As expected, it can be used to dodge attacks. Ling Han exclaimed in delight. However, what extent can it reach? He wanted to experiment again with the wild hog, but when he saw the hog looking at him with pitiful eyes, he couldn't help but smile, and tossed it into the Black Tower. On the basis of your merit, I will not eat you in future. He drew out a bowl, stored it away into the separate dimension, and then rapidly struck with the divine demon sword. The space was shattered, and that bowl naturally had been broken to bits. As expected. Faced with overwhelming power or higher-level regulations, this separate dimension is not safe, either. Ling Han was grim. He pressed a hand on himself and he had suddenly vanished and then reappeared. Actually, when my opponent's attack reaches me, I could also draw the attack into the separate dimension, and it would reach me a breath later. Even if it only slowed down by a single instant, it would be enough time for me to dodge. This regulation of space, I can call it banishing technique. There should be even more uses to it. I can slowly develop it. Furthermore, my present cultivation level is too weak. When my power increases a little further, I will be able to slowly complete these incomplete regulations. Chapter 1601. Returning to Star Sand Martial Arts Academy. The cloud-piercing shuttle landed, and Ling Han put it away. He strode towards the chaotic demon palace. Very soon, he arrived at the chaotic demon palace. The Hysteria Demon Master met with him personally. Ling Han revealed some secrets of the celestial realm as appropriate, causing this demon master to be incredibly stunned. This had broken the understanding that he had maintained for innumerable years. However, a demon master was still a demon master, after all. Very soon he accepted this fact. Ling Han made him a promise. If he was able to tear open the barrier into the celestial realm one day, he would bring this demon master with him into the celestial realm. He also left some treasures behind. Those were treasures that he had robbed from the over 100 heaven demons, earth demons, and black demons. He casually chose a few, and they were enough to cause the Hysteria Demon Master's eyes to widen and his heart to throb wildly. Ling Han, where are the two big sisters? Ling Han had just walked out of the rooms of the Hysteria Demon Master when he saw Wu Ju immediately approach him, looking here and there. Ling Han shot out a kick. Those are my wives. You just go wherever you are wanted. If you still dare to let your imagination run wild, I will turn you into a eunuch. The little bottom's expression was filled with grievance as he muttered something under his breath. Emily came to send him off, and when she knew that the true limit of the eternal river tier was 10 million stars, she couldn't help but gape in shock. It was truly rare to see such an obvious change in expression from her. Ling Han told her some tricks. These were methods that the various great forbidden lands had found after innumerable years. Ouyang Taishan revealed them to him, and Ling Han would never keep secrets from those close to him, especially regarding the profound secrets of cultivation. He set out once more, and arrived at Cold Cloud's planet to pay a visit to the Overlord Sword Demon Master. Previously, both the Hysteria Demon Master and Overlord Sword Demon Master had stepped out bravely for his sake, and he remembered this favor. Ling Han similarly promised that he would bring the Overlord Sword Demon Master with him when he entered into the celestial realm, and also left behind some treasures as a token of his gratitude, which made this demon master very rueful. This was really like the saying, seeking virtue and acquiring it. Virtue had its reward, evil would get its retribution. Ling Han, remember to come back and see me, Zhu Xian said when he walked out, her tone full of tender feelings. Ling Han did not have any designs on her at all, and decided to be honest so that she would not waste time on him. Miss Zhu, I already have a few lovers, and you? I'm not going to listen. Zhu Xian did not allow him to finish his words. She covered her ears with her hands, turned around and ran. Ling Han sighed. Hopefully, this would not be an ill-fated relationship. In any case, he would not be trifling with other women. Merely these lovers by his side were already enough of a headache for him. The cloud-piercing shuttle pierced through the air, and flew towards the two-realm passageway. In truth, the netherworld also had many two-realm passageways, and any one of them could reach the immortal realm, but Ling Han was not familiar with the other places of the immortal realm. What if he went even further if he exited from another passageway? Forget it. He had best just go back on his original course. In any case, it was only a matter of a few years. The cloud-piercing shuttle traveled swiftly, while Ling Han and his companions cultivated inside the Black Tower. 2 years had passed. They had already arrived at the two-realm passageway. Furthermore, their strength had greatly improved as compared to 2 years ago. Not only had the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden advanced into the Eternal River tier, she had even reached the medium extreme, and the Empress meanwhile had reached the peak stage of the consummate level of the Eternal River tier, and was presently working hard on breaching that most crucial breakthrough to advance into the pinnacle level. In comparison, it was Ling Han's cultivation level that had the smallest improvement. He just managed to reach the peak stage of the high extreme, and needed to settle down a bit. Then, he would burst through to the consummate level in one go. After entering into the immortal realm, the Hu clan will be able to grasp the link of karma on me, and another battle is inevitable. However, the final power boost would be just right to be left for them. Ling Han said to himself. Hoping that the Hu clan would learn their lesson and pull back? This was clearly not a realistic hope. They traveled on foot, and began to pass through the two-realm passageway. By now, all 3 of them were in the Eternal River tier, and one of them had even reached the consummate level of the Eternal River tier. In this place, they were naturally absolutely invincible. However, they had no intention to commit bloodshed for no reason. In the Netherworld, they showed the unique traits of the Netherworld, and after entering into the immortal realm, they naturally changed. Though the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden had not been able to merge the regulations of the 2 realms, she was able to change over. However, her power declined greatly after entering into the immortal realm. After all, she had previously been cultivating the regulations of the Netherworld all this while. After passing through the two-realm battlefield, they returned to the immortal realm. They all felt like they had finally seen the light of day again, though they had not stayed many years in the Netherworld. They visited the Purple Moon Divine Maiden again, and what delighted them was the fact that the Purple Moon Divine Maiden actually managed to get a breakthrough in these few years, and had advanced into the consummate level of the Eternal River tier. Of course, the Purple Moon Divine Maiden was definitely even more shocked because these 3 people were improving at an even faster pace than she. As usual, Ling Han left behind some cultivation resources. With his present wealth, this naturally was no big deal. After leaving the Purple Moon Army, the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden asked, "Are we returning to Joint Peace Planet, or going to Wood Figure Planet?" Wood Figure Planet, Ling Han replied without hesitation. He still had some matters to settle, such as asking Long Xiangyue about the whereabouts of her aunt so he could ask for a dragon's horn. The 2 women naturally voiced no objection. They once again traveled via the cloud-piercing shuttle, heading towards Wood Figure Planet. They did not spend much time on their way there, and in a mere few months, they had already arrived on Wood Figure Planet. The cloud-piercing shuttle landed quietly, without alerting anyone of its presence. Ling Han and his companions arrived at the 8th campus. This place was just like how it used to be. It was as if the matter with the Hu clan had never happened before. Ling Han. Yet when they appeared at the entrance to the Martial Arts Academy, they just happened to encounter a person that coincidentally walked out. When he saw the 3 of them, he was suddenly inconceivably shocked. Then, he flew into a thunderous rage, and shot out a punch right at Ling Han. "You bastard, you actually dare come back. The Empress took one step forwards, and pressed down her palm on empty air. Pang! That person was immediately sent flying. In front of the present Empress, even such big shots like Kai Miao and Ren Feiyun would have to admit defeat. Ling Han smiled slightly, and stopped the Empress's next action. He asked, "So what if it is me? Why can't I come back?" The person struggled to get to his feet as he angrily exclaimed at Ling Han, "You've brought so much trouble to the academy." A thought flashed in Ling Han's head. At the time, though he had drawn away the calamity, the Hu clan probably wouldn't have so easily spared the Star Sand Martial Arts Academy, either. He nodded and said, "After I left, what happened?" He would definitely call the Hu clan to an accounting for this debt. However much they took, he would have them repay 10 times. No, 100 times the amount. Ling Han. Another man walked out, yet he immediately leaked a menacing killing intent. Kai Miao. Ling Han couldn't help but smile and said, "Senior brother Kai, it's been a long time. Previously, though you were very overbearing towards me, I still admit that you are a king tier in any case, yet you are actually willing to become the lackey of another, which causes me to look down on you. Do not argue needlessly." Kai Miao pointed at Ling Han. "You fled due to your fear of punishment, and implicated the academy. And now, you actually have the face to come back. I will suppress you." Chapter 1602. Furiously Thrashed. Ling Han shook his head and said, "If we're talking about punishment, that is not up to you either, so don't pretend to be so righteous. I say, previously, you brought that ugly woman to make trouble for me, and I haven't called you to an accounting for that yet." "Humph, what right do you have to defy the Saint Missus?" Kai Miao asked coldly, and the gaze he directed at Ling Han contained a sliver of jealousy. He was indeed jealous of this young man before him. When he had first entered into the academy, he was forced to crawl through the dog's hole, and though this spurred on his endless fervor, it could not be denied that his heart had still been twisted by the experience. But what made him even more indignant was the fact that Ling Han had an incomparably beautiful and boundlessly graceful exquisite lady by his side. What part of him was inferior to Ling Han? Why was it not him that got the aid of a person of high rank, and avoided the humiliation of crawling through the dog's hole? Why was it not him who had an incomparably beautiful empress by his side? Thus, he had always been hostile to Ling Han. When the two of them had been confronting each other, other disciples discovered them as well, and they couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. I called another, and you called another, and suddenly more people had come over. Ling Han. It's Ling Han. He actually came back. Senior brother Ling. Senior brother Ling. Senior brother Ling. Everyone called out. Though there were some people that hated Ling Han because he had caused them to have no cultivation resources to use in the last several years, there were more who remembered that it was he who had stepped out to protect the pride of the academy, and resolutely took 3 blows from Huang Mu, forcing Huang Mu to make a public apology, and it was Ling Han who killed the latter on the spot. To the majority, this was a legend. Now that the legend had appeared in front of them, it was natural that everyone would be excited, and they all began cheering. Ling Han nodded at the masses, which was considered greeting them. There were too many people here. He did not have the time to greet each and every one of them. Ling Han. Kai Miao shouted loudly. He was naturally not willing to be ignored completely. Don't be anxious. I haven't forgotten you. Ling Han turned to look at him, a coldness flickering in his eyes. He felt that Kai Miao was deliberately targeting him, and was not like the others, who had resented him previously only because he had broken a tradition. Since you are targeting me, there is no need for me to be polite, either. Come fight me. Kai Miao shouted loudly. The Star Sand Martial Arts Academy did not have any rule against using one's superior strength to bully a weaker opponent. If you are afraid of being beaten, then just obediently stay in your own quarters and not come out. Kai Miao, are you even human? Ren Feiyun strode out. Previously, when a saint arrived and willfully trod on the pride of our academy, where were you? Why did you not jump out then? Instead, it was Ling Han. He stepped out and took back the pride of our academy. But what about you? You are actually treating him like this now. His expression was filled with disdain. At the time, why didn't you challenge Ling Han? Humph, at that time, Ling Han still had the battle prowess of a Saint King burning, and had incomparable battle prowess, and you did not even dare challenge him at all. If you want a battle, come, I will be your opponent. These words were powerful and resonating, and also made the majority respond in kind. They all began to cheer, supporting Ling Han. Kai Miao couldn't help but look livid and exclaimed, "Don't forget, it was also because of him that the academy was implicated." And what did he do? He just simply slipped away. But what about us? You all think about it. What cultivation resources have you all gotten these few years, and whose fault was it? Kai Miao, have you had enough? Ren Feiyun's tone was icy cold. He could no longer hold himself back from making a move. Shua, it was at this time, a figure moved before he managed to, and leaped towards Kai Miao. It was precisely the Empress. He dared to insult her husband. Watch out for the attack. With a wave of her hand, she delivered a slap at Kai Miao. Humph! Kai Miao was uncaring. Previously, the Empress was capable of fighting him to a tie, and that was because the latter had a strange brick in her possession that could absorb all attacks. It was not because the Empress's own power was a match for his. And now, without taking that brick, you still want to fight me? He smirked coldly, and knew this kind of noble, proud woman had to be defeated first before one could conquer her heart. Otherwise, she would not even bother to cast an eye on you. You are no match for me, I do not want to wound. Pa! Kai Miao had not finished his words when he had already sustained a heavy slap. His whole person was suddenly flipped over. Pooh! Blood gushed madly, creating an arc in midair like a rainbow, though it was more tragically than naturally beautiful. The Empress stood there, incredibly proud. Her expression was filled with disdain. It was clearly such a disdainful expression, yet everyone found it hard to feel the slightest bit of dislike, and only felt that the Empress was really too formidable and aggressive. They very much wanted to worship her. Once Kai Miao's behind landed on the ground, he immediately bounced back to his feet, his expression filled with humiliation and rage. He looked over the Empress again and menacingly said, "So you have advanced into the consummate level of the Eternal River tier, no wonder." This was extremely shocking. It should be known that when the Empress first entered the academy, she was only in the pinnacle level of the Heavenly Body tier, yet now she shockingly reached the consummate level of the Eternal River tier, and was already capable of breaking through to the Saint level. Everyone inhaled sharply. Those that could enter this place naturally were all prodigies and king tiers of their respective galaxies. They were used as examples for others to compare themselves to. Just look at that so-and-so. He had already entered into the Mountain River tier in how many years, and already become a Sun Moon tier in how many years, but compared with Empress Luan Xing, they were all trash. Yet Kai Miao did not show any sign of fear. Previously, he had underestimated her strength, and furthermore, he walked the path of using oneself as a formation. When the formation activated, that was the true reflection of his real strength. "You have angered me," he declared. Wang wang wang. A killing formation activated inside him, and multiple formation patterns appeared on his skin, inconceivably frightening. Pa! The Empress delivered another slap, and Kai Miao was once again sent flying. What was going on here? Though they had heard Kai Miao say that Empress Luan Xing had already reached the consummate level of the Eternal River tier, not one person really thought that the Empress would be capable of matching Kai Miao, because he was one of the 3 great big shots of the 8th campus. What did the name Big Shot mean? It meant being invincible among his peers. They believed that as long as Kai Miao's killing formation activated, he would definitely be able to restrain the Empress. After all, she had just broken through to this cultivation level, so how could she possibly oppose a big shot? But the result gave everyone a heavy slap in the face. So what if the killing formation activated? He would still be thrashed. Ran Feiyun. All the disciples. Impossible. Kai Miao covered his face with one hand. Even his hair was slightly messy. He stared at the Empress in astonishment. He definitely could not accept this result. How could the Empress possibly bother with him? Her slender hand moved repeatedly. Pa pa pa. A bout of slaps was delivered, and Kai Miao had completely no way of fighting back. At present, not only was her cultivation level equal to Kai Miao's, she was a divine fetus as well, and had also cultivated a good several celestial techniques. How could it be that such battle prowess would still be unable to crush a false big shot? Without entering into the pinnacle level, how could he possibly be called a big shot? Pa, 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 pa. Everyone was watching in dumbfounded shock. The big shot they were all so sure of, Kai Miao, who would definitely not lose in a battle of equal levels, was now as fragile as if he was a weak scholar that had never cultivated in his life. This was too unbelievable. Chapter 1603. The Hu clan is alerted. The Empress raised her hand, looking like she was planning to strike him again. Kai Miao quickly broke into a run and fled, but he had just moved when he realized that he had actually entered into a completely closed-off space. There was no way out of this space. In the moment that he was stunned, he had once again returned to a normal dimension, yet another person had appeared in front of him. It was Ling Han. Suddenly, he felt an intense fury and hatred sprout in him. The Empress had already become a big shot among big shots, and he was completely no match for her, but Ling Han was only in the high extreme of the Eternal River tier, so how could he possibly be a match for a big shot like himself? I'll just take it out on you. He grabbed at Ling Han. He planned to take out the frustration he experienced with the Empress on Ling Han. Ling Han felt a moment of distress. There were really so many abilities that he possessed now that he did not know which one he should use to deal with Kai Miao. Killing Formation? Nine Heavens Flame? Lightning Sword Technique? Tide of the Ages? Darkness of the Paramount Night? Flying Dragon Shadow Hands. He sighed softly. In Kai Miao's eyes, this was naturally an expression of weakness. He couldn't help but smirk coldly. This brat was really ridiculous. He no longer had a Saint King's power, and still dared oppose him? Humph! What a ****. He hated Ling Han for having such a precious treasure like the Saint King blood essence and actually using it for momentary satisfaction. If it was given to him, he naturally would use it in an ancient site when he was searching for treasure. Just how valuable would that kind of treasure be that would need the Saint King blood essence to be able to get hold of it? What a waste! A great waste! Thus, he hated Ling Han very much. He pressed out a palm, and the killing formation activated. He would not kill Ling Han, but would render him as much suffering as he possibly could. Ling Han considered for a moment, and then pointed a finger at Kai Miao. An indescribable, most quiet darkness immediately wrapped around Kai Miao. It was clearly only a 9 meters wide area, but Kai Miao was still trapped within, and could not escape no matter what he did. Everyone was stunned. Had Ling Han become a saint? How could he trap Kai Miao in darkness just by pointing a single finger, and he did not reappear after that? Furthermore, he had caused Kai Miao to disappear mysteriously just now, so what technique was that? Only a few years had passed, and the gap between them and Ling Han seemed to have widened to an indescribable extent. A few years ago they could still say that Ling Han had channeled the Saint King blood essence, so it was absolutely normal that they were no match for him, but now, some people were incredibly awesome, and were always able to create miracles, while others could only worship them. Senior Brother Ling. Everyone cheered. Cultivators admired the elite, and Ling Han had used true strength to win everyone's respect. Ling Han nodded with a smile, and entered the academy with the 2 women. All the disciples followed behind him, and talked excitedly. The majority of them were asking Ling Han about his experiences in these several years, and of course there were some that wanted to know how Ling Han had become so strong. Ling Han did not conceal anything. He spoke of how he had been hunted by Hu Feng, and escaped into the netherworld. Yet he thrived there, and even had some relations with 2 demon masters, which made everyone cluck their tongues in surprise. If it had been them, they could not have possibly lasted until the change in regulations was complete. They would long since have been targeted and killed by the elites of the netherworld. Of course, Ling Han naturally could not possibly reveal core secrets such as the Celestial Realm and the Black Tower. There were some things that still required the Star Sand Saint to decide whether to announce them or not. You've returned. The Tranquil Heart Saint appeared, and nodded at Ling Han, an expression of surprise flickering on his face. 27 killing formations, and furthermore, it was the strongest killing formation beneath Saint level, the limitless 9 Deaths formation. This brat was a monster. Greetings, Saint. Ling Han greeted with clasped hands. The Tranquil Heart Saint could be termed a good teacher and helpful friend to him. Come. The Tranquil Heart Saint brought Ling Han to meet with the Star Sand Saint. The threat from the Hu clan had not been resolved. How could Ling Han dare to return at this time? Did he want to die? Ling Han only said that he had a way to temporarily possess the abilities of a Saint King, and there was no need to worry about the Hu clan. Additionally, he revealed the secret of the Celestial Realm to the two saints. In the future, when he entered into the Celestial Realm, he would not mind bringing some people along with him. The two saints were stunned. Even though they were already standing at the peak of the Immortal Realm, as it turned out, if they were in the Immortal Realm, they couldn't even be termed elites. This caused them some disappointment, and it was even difficult for them to accept, but saints were saints, after all. It was naturally impossible that they would not even have that bit of courage, and they soon pulled themselves together. They could cultivate to the highest level in the ancient realm, which proved that their natural talent was astonishing, so after they entered into the Celestial Realm, they should not be inferior to anyone either. After returning to the 8th campus, Ling Han focused on asking guidance from the Tranquil Heart Saint about formations. This was a saint that had succeeded Dao through formations, and in terms of understanding of formations, he was far superior to the Star Sand Saint. The Tranquil Heart Saint admired Ling Han very much, and he felt internally rueful. Previously, it would have been good if he had been able to take Ling Han as his personal disciple, but now, the potential and abilities that the latter showed caused even him to gasp in surprise, and he himself felt that he did not have the qualification to take Ling Han as a disciple. Ling Han had long since been able to kill Huang Mu, yet he himself did not even manage to take one attack from the latter. Furthermore, Ling Han had asked many questions that gave him extremely great inspiration, and repeatedly made many clever remarks and voiced unusual ideas. Going by that trend, it might not take a few thousand years, and he would be able to advance to become a medium saint. He couldn't help but feel more doting towards Ling Han, and increasingly felt that it was a pity that he was not his disciple. Ling Han's gains were even greater. In terms of grasping the basics of formations, the Tranquil Heart Saint far surpassed him, and when he explained the difficult subject matter in simple and easily understandable terms, everything became clear to him at once. Moreover, he felt that as long as he was able to reach Saint tier, he should be able to quickly grasp Saint-level formations. Time passed quietly, and in the blink of an eye, a few months had already passed. The 8 Stones Forbidden Land, the Hu clan. In the instant that Ling Han stepped into the Immortal Realm, Hu Luo's eyes immediately snapped open, anger and pain flashing over his face. Fenger actually died. He pinched his fingers and made a prediction, and after a long while, his hair involuntarily lengthened, and it seemed as if he was stunned to the extreme. It's that despicable brat. How could this be? Going by my deductions, he should no longer have any Saint King blood essence left, while Fenger has obtained a drop of blood essence that I personally bestowed on him, so how could he possibly die at the hands of that despicable brat? The link of karma cannot be faked. Ouyang Taishan, you old coarse fellow, it must have been you. Hu Luo suddenly slammed his palm on the table, and as the frightening strength washed out, Hong, the room he was in was suddenly shattered to bits. A maidservant and a servant boy did not even manage to exclaim in shock when they, too, were turned to dust along with the room itself. Finally, he regained control over his emotions. Otherwise, it would not be a matter of a single room, but rather the whole 8 Stones Forbidden Land could possibly be ruined by him in his fury. Grand Elder! Grand Elder! Grand Elder! 6 saints immediately appeared, and all of them looked at Hu Luo reverently. Though there were 2 other Saint Kings in the Hu clan, only Hu Luo had reached the peak stage, and his battle prowess was in the category of big shots. This was the stabilizing force of the entire Hu clan, yet the Grand Elder actually flew into such a thunderous rage, which naturally stunned the others. The link of karma. Hu Feng. Very quickly, they found out the reason for Hu Luo's rage, and all of their expressions involuntarily darkened. Hu Feng was too outstanding, and they believed that he could be named a prodigy even in the celestial realm, yet now he had actually been killed. Ouyang Taishan previously had played mediator for that despicable brat, yet now Fenger has died in the hands of that damn brat. I am sure it must have been Ouyang Taishan that severely injured Fenger, and that damn brat must have taken advantage of the opening to unleash a fatal attack, Hu Luo said menacingly, his killing intent taking solid form. Chapter 1604. Traitor. Humph, we definitely cannot spare that damn brat. Since the link of karma has appeared, it is proof that the despicable brat has returned to the immortal realm. What brazen courage, he killed one of our Hu clan, and actually dares to come strutting back. We must not be careless. That despicable brat previously fled into the netherworld, yet now returned. There must be something strange about it. As the saints conversed, all of them determined that Ling Han had to be killed, or there would be no need for the 8 stones forbidden land to exist any longer in future. Having 2 saints die consecutively in the hands of a junior, they would be regarded with extreme disdain by the others. However, Ling Han's return was too illogical, which made them believe that this was possibly a trap. Hu Luo hummed lowly. This vengeance definitely had to be executed, and Ling Han still had the rare treasures of the Heavenly River King in his possession. That was a Celestial King technique. Even if this is a trap, we cannot alert the other forbidden lands, he quickly said. I will conceal the twist of fate so that the other forbidden lands would not be able to make any prediction, and then I will personally hunt down that despicable brat. Grand Elder with Ouyang Taishan, that old geezer, stirring up trouble in secret, it is greatly possible that there are other forbidden lands involved to target us, a saint spoke up. Hu Luo nodded and said, 2nd and 6th, the 2 of you stay behind, and the others. All of you will go with me. Additionally, we'll bring a few juniors with outstanding natural talent along with us. Since they want to sound me out, I will also do my own probing. If they turned out in full strength, and had their lair destroyed right behind their backs, they would be crying, but with 5 saints, they did not believe that Ling Han would still be able to create any disturbance. However capable Ouyang Taishan was, he was still a big shot of the netherworld, and had limited influence in the immortal realm. For the sake of the rare treasure of the Heavenly River King, even if this is a trap, we will have to step in. Hu Luo declared resolutely. N. The other saints nodded. If they obtained a Celestial King technique, the Hu clan would skyrocket, and when they entered into the Celestial realm in the future, it was even possible that they would become a top-tier Celestial King level force. It was worth the gamble. With Hu Luo in the lead, there were a total of 6 saints that rode their golden paths heading to Woodfigure Planet. The juniors naturally stayed inside a spatial god tool. However, because the distance was really too far, even they had to travel for a whole 3 months' time to finally arrive at Woodfigure Planet. 6 saints arrived, and 2 saint kings were among them. What kind of concept was that? With their saintly might spreading out, all the living creatures of the entire Woodfigure Planet felt a tremble right from their hearts, as if their souls were about to be shattered. Greetings, Saint Kings. The Star Sand Saint came out with his 9 disciples in tow, paying a respectful greeting to Hu Luo. Hu Luo was presently making a prediction, and also spreading out his divine sense and observation, but no matter how he looked, he could not find the slightest thing off this planet was just like how it had been previously. The strongest elite here was only a great saint. Strange, too strange. He definitely did not believe that Ling Han would dare to strut back just like this. There was definitely something strange about this matter, and there had to be a conspiracy about. Could it be that the force behind Ling Han was hiding in a spatial god tool? He was really overthinking things. However, no matter how wild his imagination was, how could he possibly think that there was something like the power boost from the Black Tower? He indeed could not understand how Ling Han could dare to come back alone. In his eyes, the quieter and more peaceful this place was, the more terrifying the killing intent here was. Perhaps, there were a considerable number of forbidden lands targeting them, wanting to take the chance to get rid of the 8 stones forbidden land. Don't think that just because they shared the name Forbidden Land, they were on the same side. He did not even look at the tranquil heart saint, fearing that seeing the latter's face would shake his resolve. After all, the latter was his master, and the accumulated prestige he had over him was heavy. The fact that he would appear at this moment was because he had firmed up his resolve to rebel and leave the academy. After such a great humiliation, he no longer had any face to remain in the academy, and Ling Han was a thorn in his side that he was determined to remove. It just so happened that he had encountered visitors from the Hu clan, so he naturally had to grasp this chance. "My lord, that Ling Han has returned to the academy 3 months ago, and is presently in seclusion in his own courtyard," he informed. This was naturally within Hu Luo's expectations. At first, he was planning to flare up, and now with these words from Kai Miao, he directed a faint smile at the Star Sand Saint, and asked, "Have you deceived me?" These words were spoken with a tone of blazing killing intent. Chapter 1605. The Act of Violence of a Vile Character. The Star Sand Saint's heart trembled. In truth, it was not that they did not want to allow Ling Han to come out previously. Ling Han had already said that when the Hu clan came, he would use his trump card and exhibit battle prowess that was on the level of peak stage Saint King. He would directly erase all the elites of the Hu clan. However, Ling Han very much liked to go into seclusion and would disappear randomly, so even the Star Sand Saint was very helpless. At such a key moment, he had again disappeared. He swept an eye over Kai Miao, and an uncontrollable hatred rose up in his heart. If it was not this the traitorous act of this disciple, how could he be in such a passive situation? He only had to insist that Ling Han was not here, and that was it. The Star Sand Saint did not know that there existed such a thing like a link of karma. Hu Luo paused slightly. He suddenly managed to grasp the link of karma again. His aged eyes narrowed slightly, and very soon, he saw a figure streak past and arrive. His eyes immediately became slightly bloodshot because this was precisely the mortal foe of their Hu clan. An eternal river tear actually managed to become the mortal foe of a forbidden land. This was practically a joke, but the truth was indeed so. 2 saints of the Hu clan had already died by Ling Han's hand. 2 saints. Even in a forbidden land, saints were not that common. Even the Hu clan only had 10 saints. Each and every saint had been nurtured through an unknown amount of sacrifice and expense. Merely in terms of saintly medicine, each had consumed no less than 3, and the death of every saint meant a tremendous loss. Furthermore, Hu Feng had been the future hope of the Hu clan, and he similarly had died at the hands of this despicable brat. "Am I late?" Ling Han smiled, his eyes sweeping over the saints of the Hu clan on the platform, a similar killing intent flickering in his eyes. Hu Luo suppressed his killing intent, and said, "Since the leading characters are all here, let's begin the spar." "That's right, I think this boy is not too bad, so just let him join our Hu clan and battle on our side." "Yes, Grand Elder." The saints of the Hu clan all smiled and nodded. When Kai Miao heard this, he gritted his teeth, and kowtowed 9 times in succession in the direction of Hu Luo. "Thank you for granting me this opportunity, Grand Elder." Now, he had truly and completely stood on the opposing side of the Star Sand Martial Arts Academy, and there was no way out for him. A public betrayal. Beneath them, all the disciples were glaring furiously at Kai Miao. Every single person here did not have any positive feelings for the Hu clan. At the time, Hu Yingmu had been so arrogant, and trampled all over the academy's pride, yet Kai Miao actually sold himself to the enemy, making everyone want to kill him. A human being should have his bottom line. Kai Miao only acted like he did not see them. Since he had already stepped onto this path, he could only follow this path to its end. Hu Luo couldn't help but break into a smile, beckoned Kai Miao over and said, "Come here." He tapped out a finger, and suddenly a ray of light entered into Kai Miao's body. "You will be first up." At first, Kai Miao was shocked, which was quickly followed by great joy. He could feel a tremendous strength inside himself, making him feel like he could create a hole in the heaven and earth itself with a single punch. The saints of the Hu clan all smirked coldly. This finger move was called Divine Shock Finger, and could fully excite the complete potential that one had. He would gain a massive burst of battle prowess for a short period of time, but he would be completely crippled after the battle. This kind of trash really thought that he could join the Hu clan? TSK. Yet Kai Miao did not know, and only thought that this was the nature-defying ability of a Saint King causing his battle prowess to soar. He knelt down once more and said, "Grand Elder, thank you for your favor. I will definitely not disappoint the great hopes you have for me." He leaped out and casually exclaimed, "Who will fight me?" All the disciples were indignant at the injustice. They really had never seen such a shameless guy. "I will." One of the big-shot disciples leaped out. He was a king tier of the 3rd campus, and his name was Shi Deng. "Ha ha ha ha." Kai Miao did not say another word, and directly shot out a punch. The killing formation inside him activated, and accompanied with the frightening power that he presently had, Shi Deng was actually not his match at all. Pang! He was directly sent flying out of the battle area. A dead silence fell. Shi Deng's limbs were drooping, his whole body covered with blood. He had lost half his life with this single strike, and had already lost consciousness. Trash! Kai Miao spat out. He was really completely happy with his current achievement. This was the true supreme power that he had always pursued. What a joke! Previously, he had been earnestly cultivating, but he had not imagined that he only needed the gift bestowed from an elite, and he would be able to instantly possess such supreme power. This was really the smartest and wisest choice that he had made in this lifetime. Next! With his hands crossed behind his back, he acted insufferably arrogant. Me! 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 All of a sudden, there were actually 4 big-shot disciples that leaped into the tournament grounds at the same time, and Ren Feiyun was one of them. This was really a vile character getting to power, and becoming conceited and arrogant. No one could bear to watch him flaunting his power, and they felt that killing him with a single strike would be too easy on him. They had to nail him to the pillar at the entrance of the academy, so that he would be spurned by the future generations, and serve as a warning for others. Let me, the rest of you leave. No, let me. The 4 big shots argued among themselves, all of them wanting to exchange blows with Kai Miao. Hee, you all can fight together. Kai Miao grinned evilly. He felt that the power inside him was still growing, and reached an inconceivable level. It was obvious that the number of his stars had not increased, but every star had enlarged by more than 10 times, causing his power to soar along with them. He charged out, and attacked the 4 big shots at the same time. Pang pang pang. His offensive was too frightening, forcing the 4 big shots to make their move, but even so, they were still at a disadvantage, and were suppressed by Kai Miao in the battle. Ha 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 ha, I am the true king tier of the younger generation. Kai Miao laughed loudly. Though he was not able to defeat these 4 big shots for now, he could feel that the power inside him was still endlessly growing. It would not take too long, and he would be able to overwhelm the 4 of them with his superior strength. This was great. This was wonderful. True enough, after merely over a dozen moves, the 4 big shots were all sent flying with a single punch from Kai Miao. All of them threw up blood continuously. At least half the bones in their bodies had been broken. Next. Kai Miao was increasingly conceited. His target was Ling Han, but he would not take the initiative to challenge him, because as he saw it, it was he who was in a superior position now, so how could he turn around to challenge a weakling? He would just be standing here, and whoever came up would just be defeated with a single punch from him. Seeing how arrogant he was, all the disciples were exploding with fury. When had it been that even a traitor was able to be so arrogant? But even the combined forces of the 4 big shots were no match for him. The present Kai Miao was really too powerful. Perhaps they would need 10 of them to join forces to be able to suppress him. But even if they could win with 10 of them working together, what meaning was there to it? Is there no one else? Kai Miao looked down on them, his expression filled with disdain. Anyone else? Everyone clenched their fists tightly in anger, but the present Kai Miao was indeed strong, and they could only watch his arrogant behavior helplessly. Damn him! Despicable! Xiao, a figure flashed past, and an extremely graceful exquisite beauty was standing in the tournament grounds, causing even the sun to lose its shine, and flowers would pale under her beauty. Empress Luan Xing. When they saw the Empress, even the hearts of Hu Luo and the other saints involuntarily shook, and a desire to possess her rose up in them. In this aspect, they were far inferior to the Star Sand Saint and the others because the Star Sand Saint and the other saints were focused on teaching cultivation. They placed a greater importance on the natural talent of their disciples. But Hu Luo and his group were a different story. They had no awareness of being a worthy teacher. Though they were already so old, their desires did not decrease in the slightest. Chapter 1606. Suffering the consequences of his actions. B*Tsich, you have indeed appeared. Kai Miao said sinisterly. He no longer had any dreams about Empress Luan Xing. He indeed still wanted to possess the Empress, but did not want to do so through courting her. Instead, He wanted to take her through brute force. He now had such strength. Kneel! He made his move, incredibly dark thoughts filling his heart. He wanted to have the Empress kneel in front of him and lick his toes. The Empress did not even bother to speak, and merely directed a slap at Kai Miao. Pa! But this time, Kai Miao was not struck. Instead, he managed to stretch out his arm to parry the blow in the nick of time, and stop this palm strike in its course. Haha, I am no longer the person I once was. Kai Miao laughed loudly. This feeling of strength was really too awesome. With a turn of his hand, he stretched out his hand to grab at the Empress's wrist. Even just a touch of her wrist would satisfy a little of his desire to take advantage of her. Seeing this scene, not just the disciples were furious. Even the saints of the Hu clan couldn't help but frown. A mere ant like him still dared to touch a woman that they had their eyes on. The Empress naturally would not allow him to succeed. Her fingers swept out and delivered a frightening sword chi. Pang pang pang. The two of them endlessly exchanged blows at close range, but their respective abilities were unexpectedly equal. Neither was able to get the upper hand. I can be even stronger. Kai Miao shouted loudly. He took a deep breath and exhaled. True enough, the power within him was bubbling. Every star expanded again, reaching an extreme size. They could not grow any bigger. Even just the slightest bit bigger would mean that they would explode. I am an invincible king tier. Kai Miao shot out a punch at the Empress. The killing formation activated, but compared with his own battle prowess, the might of the killing formation was actually negligible. Ling Han watched from outside, and internally assessed, about the standard of over 2 million stars. In a forbidden land, there was no small number of such prodigies, but they had all reached that level through their own cultivation. Kai Miao, on the other hand, would only be short-lived. Ling Han could see very clearly that this kind of strength was obtained through paying the price of burning one's own life. After the battle ended, even if Kai Miao did not die, he would become a cripple. At most, he would live until reaching the 100 years limit of a mortal lifespan before dying of old age. This kind of strength. The Empress could handle it. The Empress's face was filled with pride. She used a celestial technique, and the darkness of the paramount night spread out. As an endless darkness enshrouded Kai Miao, he had absolutely no idea where the target of his attack was, even though he possessed extremely strong power. Not enough. Not enough. Yet Kai Miao shouted loudly, and struck out with both hands, creating a strong gale that dispersed the darkness by force. In front of absolute strength, indeed, nothing could stand in his way. The Empress was not discouraged, and through the movements of her hands, she used the flying dragon shadow hands. Pa 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 pa. One after another, palm strikes landed on Kai Miao. The speed was much too fast, and Kai Miao was unable to dodge at all. Kai Miao stumbled from the attacks, but what was stunning was the fact that his present defenses were also extremely shocking. His expression didn't even change after sustaining so many palm strikes, as if he had become completely immortal. Because this was the ultimate glory that came from completely forcing out all of one's potential and vitality. Kai Miao's present recovery ability was comparable to having cultivated the indestructible Heaven's Scroll. Though the punch caused him serious injury, he had completely recovered in the next instant. After a dozen oversteps, Kai Miao finally regained his footing. Through a moment of sensing, he realized that he did not have the slightest bit of injury. Then, he couldn't help but laugh raucously. This was strength that had reached a level that even he himself could barely believe it. As expected of the ways of a saint king, it was nature-defying. It's my turn. He leaped back and began his counterattack. However, it was only his power that had been boosted, and he did not cultivate any celestial technique, so the power of his attacks was actually very limited. How could he possibly defeat the Empress? The two of them fought fiercely. One showed endless numbers of celestial techniques, while the other's recovery ability was nature-defying, and he could recover immediately no matter how powerful the attacks he sustained, which resulted in a stalemate. The Empress couldn't help but be angered. With a thought, she finally used her bloodline ability, or rather the ability of the 9 Deaths Heaven art. One after another, doppelgangers walked out from her body, and there were suddenly 10 empresses standing quietly in the arena. The art of doppelgangers? Kai Miao was unafraid. How could mere copies match the original? They naturally were mainly meant for confusion, and their battle prowess could be ignored completely. The Empress moved. Boom, 10 bodies moved at the same time, each using a different celestial technique. Even Ling Han was dumbfounded at this sight. Darkness of the Paramount Night, Flying Dragon Shadow Hands, Tide of the Ages, Lightning Sword Technique. Each doppelganger was independently using a different celestial technique, and they directed their attacks at Kai Miao. Pang 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 pang. Kai Miao was attacked fiercely. His recovery ability was indeed amazing, but he could not hold up to the simultaneous attacks of celestial techniques from 10 empresses. Very soon, he was spurting out blood from his mouth. Then, his whole body was spraying out blood. It could be clearly seen that Kai Miao's body was completely misshapen as multiple bones pierced out of his skin. I am invincible. Kai Miao roared out angrily. He wanted to pull himself together and make a comeback, yet suddenly paled in shock. His power was abruptly beginning to decline, and at a very rapid pace. In an instant, his power had fallen to rock bottom. He was far from his original state. What more being invincible in the whole world? He had aged in an instant, his skin becoming loose, his hair turning gray, and his face was covered with wrinkles. In a single instant, he had become an old man that was close to his death. Air! He struggled, wanting to get back to his feet, yet he did not even have the slightest bit of strength left. It was all wasted effort. The Empress had forced him to his limits, and the battle had not yet ended, but his life essence was already no longer sufficient for him to continue burning it. Not only had he been beaten back to his original state, he had even become immortal. With a wave of the Empress's hand, her 9 doppelgangers returned to her body. She did not even look at Kai Miao, and directly walked back to sit beside Ling Han. She had withdrawn her aggressive bearing, and became a gentle little woman. Cough, cough. In the arena, Kai Miao was still throwing up blood. His cultivation level was completely gone, and with such heavy injuries, he was already close to death. He looked in Hu Luo's direction, and was still having his deluded dreams, anticipating that Hu Luo would step out and save him, but this naturally was only a mere delusion. The members of the Hu clan only smirked coldly. They were only using Kai Miao like a lackey in the first place. How could they possibly care about the life of a dog? Meanwhile, the Star Sand Saint nodded at the Tranquil Heart Saint, and the Tranquil Heart Saint understood his signal. He leaped out and picked Kai Miao up. The saintly power inside him surged and temporarily suppressed Kai Miao's injuries. This person cannot die so easily, he said. All the disciples had thought that the Tranquil Heart Saint wanted to save Kai Miao, but when they heard this, they couldn't help but nod. That was right. How could he be allowed such an easy death after betraying the academy? Weren't you very arrogant? Just continue being arrogant now then. Hu Luo was uncaring and waved his hand saying, "Continue." A member of the Hu clan leaped out. He surveyed the masses, and finally fixed his eyes on Ling Han. He said, "I am Hu Yongchen, and would like to seek some guidance from Brother Ling." They were finally getting serious. Ling Han smiled calmly, stood up and replied, "Since you are in such a rush to die, how could I not oblige?" Chapter 1607. Killed with a single strike. Hu Yongchen crooked a finger at Ling Han. He had a mission, and that was to force Ling Han into a corner. No matter who was standing behind Ling Han, they would definitely appear then. There was no need to worry about the Star Sand Saint and the other saints, as Grand Elder would naturally be suppressing them. Ling Han leaped out, a faint smile on his face. "Ling Han, I will give you a sincere warning. Hand over the treasure trove of the Heavenly River King, and I can leave you with a full corpse," Hu Yongchen stated calmly. In his eyes, his victory in this battle was naturally assured, and it was not worth his notice at all. He was one that had formed close to 3 million stars. Ling Han took one look at Hu Yongchen and said, "Since that is the case, I will also give you a choice. Would you like to be dismembered, or have your bones shattered and your ashes scattered into the wind?" Tit for tat, neither showing any weakness. All the disciples strongly balled their hands into fists, feeling their anger vented. Previously, they had been suppressed too harshly. It was only an impulsive action on Hu Luo's part, and it was almost enough for Kai Miao to surpass a god, defeating a good many big shots in quick succession. Thankfully, the Empress was strong enough, and had suppressed Kai Miao. But Kai Miao was still a disciple of the academy after all, so even if he was suppressed, so what? It could only be claimed that a traitor had been dealt with, and it could only be considered a completely superficial blow to the Hu clan. But if Hu Yongchen could be killed, that would be a severe blow to the Hu clan. Of course, the majority of them were only dreaming. With a Saint King in the sidelines, did Ling Han dare deliver a fatal blow? Even if he did, would he be able to succeed? Previously, the members of the Hu clan had watched indifferently from the sidelines because they did not take Kai Miao to heart. But how could that possibly be the same for Hu Yongchen? What a sharp tongue! Hu Yongchen smirked coldly. With a thought, his silvery river appeared. Wang! Innumerable stars shone with blazing light in the silvery river. Pooh! All the disciples spluttered, all of them gaping, completely unable to believe their eyes. Close to 3 million stars. Was this not power on the level of saints? No wonder he dared be so arrogant. No wonder the Hu clan was so powerful. Just because of this, everyone would have to admit that they were impressed. Too strong. Ling Han could not possibly be a match for that. Senior brother Ling, he is in the pinnacle level of the eternal river tier, and you are only in the high extreme. This battle is unjust. That's right. This is unfair. You don't have to fight. A great many people said thus to Ling Han. If he forced himself in this battle, it would only result in his meaningless death. Still planning to flee now? Hu Yongchen smirked coldly. He delivered a palm strike, and the power of his silvery river surged, taking the form of a massive blue bird of prey that grabbed out at Ling Han. A cold flash flickered in Ling Han's eyes. His full power burst beneath his feet, and he suddenly charged out at Hu Yongchen. The blue bird of prey arrived, yet Ling Han made no move to dodge or hide. Was he seeking his own death? Hu Yongchen smirked coldly, and all the disciples were watching anxiously. Banishment! Ling Han said softly. In the instant the blue bird of prey arrived in front of him, it suddenly disappeared. Xiao! He was completely unhindered, and had already arrived in front of Hu Yongchen. How could this be possible? Hu Yongchen's eyes widened. No matter what, he could not believe this. His attack had actually disappeared into thin air. If it had been dispelled or dodged, he could accept that, and had even long since prepared his next move, but he had never imagined that Ling Han would actually be able to charge right up to him in a head-on confrontation. This was completely outside of his expectations, and he was completely caught off guard. Boom! Ling Han's fist reached its target. Humph! Yet Hu Yongchen did not panic. Though he was a little passive, his power overwhelmed Ling Han by who knew how many times, and even if he could only presently use a 10,000th of his power, he would still be able to overwhelm Ling Han. Merely in terms of power, he could even be comparable to a saint. Was that not awesome enough? Ling Han's punch landed, and only at this moment did the 27 killing formations activate, and explode with an endless battle prowess. What he wanted was an absolutely fatal attack, not allowing any opportunity for the members of the Hu clan to save him. All the saints could tell that there were killing formations inscribed in his body, and their number was not small either, but aside from a saint that focused on formations like the Tranquil Heart Saint, none of them were able to tell how frightening so many killing formations added together would be. In truth, even the Tranquil Heart Saint could only make a guess because no one had been able to reach this extent previously. Since that was the case, how could he make an accurate estimate? If he had stimulated the killing formations the moment he moved, the saints would definitely be able to tell how terrifying it was, but their might only exploded in a burst when the punch arrived at its target, and even if the saints of the Hu clan wanted to stop it, they were too late. Pang! His fist landed, and without the slightest doubt, Hu Yongchen directly exploded into a shower of blood from the impact. Some of his blood even spurted onto Ling Han. He did not dodge or hide, bathing in the blood. Today, he was going to launch a massacre, and kill saints again. Xiao, at this moment, the blue bird of prey that Hu Yongchen had shot out suddenly appeared, charging out at the place where there was no longer anyone standing. It was now completely meaningless. A dead silence fell. Who could have imagined that a big shot that had formed close to 3 million stars would actually be killed with a single punch from someone in the high extreme of the Eternal River tier? At first, Hu Luo was stunned, which was followed by thunderous rage. Turbid air spurted from his nostrils, creating ripples in the space itself. The star sand saint beside him almost collapsed onto the ground. This had nothing to do with willpower and courage. It was completely suppression from a superior cultivation level. His initial plans were to force Ling Han into desperate straits. Then no matter who was behind Ling Han, they would definitely appear, and in that way, he would be able to decide whether it was better to battle or make peace based on the circumstances. However, he had not thought that he had not managed to force out Ling Han's backer, and instead caused an outstanding descendant of his to die. His emotions were stirred. Boom! His whole head of white hair fluttered, and there were flames interwoven among his hair. That was his rage taking solid form, which showed clearly what kind of terrible mood he was presently in. "Dong Ping, apprehend this brat," he said in a gruff voice, issuing a command to one of the saints. "Yes, Grand Elder." That saint obeyed the command. That was the 5th saint of the Hu clan, and he was also a medium saint. His name was Hu Dongping. "Senior." The Star Sand saint stood up, wanting to stop him, yet with a glare from Hu Luo, he immediately sat back down. In front of a saint king, even if he was a great saint, that was completely not enough. The Tranquil Heart saint and the others all frowned deeply. If a medium saint made his move, even they were no match for him. What more Ling Han? "Boy, who is standing behind you that dares make an enemy of our Hu clan?" Hu Dongping asked coldly. Ling Han smiled calmly. "Afraid? If you're afraid, just admit it frankly. Come, kneel down and call me grandfather, and I can consider sparing your wretched life." "Wretched life, your sister. Watch out for my savage heaven kick." Xiao, a shadow streaked past, and as expected, a paw was kicking out towards Ling Han. It was the large black dog. Ling Han waved a hand casually, and the large black dog suddenly disappeared. He calmly took a step back, and Shua, the large black dog, reappeared, and naturally missed the target of his attack. Pang! He fell onto the ground, causing a stir in the dust on the ground. Damn brat! What kind of strange and bizarre technique have you learnt this time?" The large black dog scratched his neck with one of his hind legs. "Just don't seek your own suffering," Ling Han said smilingly. On the other side, Hu Dongping was almost half dead with fury. Just how much did this boy and dog look down on him that they were actually chatting idly right in front of him? "Die!" He stretched open his right hand, and pressed it down on both Ling Han and the large black dog at the same time. Chapter 1608. Slaughtering Saints Again. Why are you attacking me as well?" The large black dog broke into a run. "This human is really too despicable. Brat Han, beat him up for your grandpa dog, thrash him until he admits defeat." Its speed was really exaggeratingly quick. It actually managed to race out of the range of attack of a saint in the nick of time, and then stood on its hind legs, patting its iron underwear. "If you're not convinced, come bite your grandpa dog then? If you manage to bite me, grandpa dog will gift this supreme treasure to you." Everyone was rendered speechless. This large black dog was as despicable as always, but they did not have the leisure to be distracted. The attack from a medium saint fell, and was already pressing down on the top of Ling Han's head. "Small tower." Ling Han called out internally. Wang, his cultivation level suddenly soared, spiking up to the peak stage of the consummate level of the Genesis tier in a single instant. He also delivered his own palm strike in a counterattack against Hu Dongping. "Not good." Hu Luo suddenly stood up. Xiao, his figure streaked out, charging towards Ling Han. At this moment, he was exerting his full effort, and there were flashes of light flickering on him, forming vibrantly colorful patterns of great Tao. Pang! Unfortunately, he was too late. Ling Han's palm strike landed, and without the slightest bit of doubt, Hu Dongping was crushed into a stain of blood. There was not even the slightest bit of complete bone that could be found. "Ah, brat!" Hu Luo roared out in fury to the heavens, his white locks dancing in the wind. His killing intent solidified, rolling out in waves. Meanwhile, the others were watching with dumbfounded shock. Fuck! He had slaughtered a saint again. Had you now become a specialist in slaughtering saints? Yet they did not know that Ling Han had been even more ruthless in the netherworld, killing more than 100 demon masters in a single go, and that was what true savagery was. The heaven and earth grieved, taking the form of a rain of blood, emotionally moved at the death of a saint. Great, well done, fantastic. The large black dog waved its behind at a distance, its iron underwear reflecting sunlight, showing how despicable it could be. Hu Luo's expression was filled with killing intent, and he suddenly tapped out a finger at the large black dog. A flash of light shot out, indescribably fast. Ling Han pressed down with a casual hand, and the large black dog immediately vanished. Only a whole breath's time after that ray of light streaked past did the large black dog suddenly reappear in its original position, looking completely dumbfounded. Brat, you dare to stop me? Hu Luo roared, striking out at Ling Han. Why would I not dare? Who do you think you are? Ling Han moved, greeting Hu Luo's incoming attack. Pang, their two attacks clashed, and a frightening power tore a rip in the space as multiple cracks appeared. He had blocked it. Everyone was in disbelief. Previously, Ling Han had surpassed a god because he had channeled a drop of Celestial King blood essence, but now faced with a true Saint King, he was still invincible. How could this be possible? No. Impossible. Kai Miao muttered, shuddering. He still had his delusions that Hu Luo would save him after everything was settled here, but seeing how powerful Ling Han was, he couldn't help but conceive a terrifying thought. You actually really merged the regulations of the two realms. Hu Luo inhaled sharply. On the surface, it seemed like they were equal, yet he was clear that he was weaker than Ling Han, a fact that he had only concealed. Ling Han was capable of merging the regulations of the two realms. No wonder Ling Han dared strut back bravely like this to the immortal realm. As it turned out, he actually had an amazing method to release battle prowess on the level of the peak stage of the consummate level of the Genesis tier, and had furthermore merged the regulations of the two realms. If he wanted, wouldn't he be able to immediately tear open space and enter into the celestial realm? Yet this was only his wild imagination. Though Ling Han was very powerful now, this power and cultivation level did not belong to him, so there was no way that he could open the doors to the celestial realm. The other saints of the Hu clan could tell how strong Ling Han was by now, and the other Saint King immediately leaped out, joining forces with Hu Luo to attack Ling Han. You come to deliver yourselves to death? Ling Han asked menacingly. The only one who will be dying is you. Hu Luo exclaimed. Since he already knew that Ling Han's confidence originated from himself, he naturally understood that there were no other forbidden lands aligned together to target the Hu clan, and was relieved instead. As long as he killed Ling Han, that was fine. The inheritance of the Celestial King would be theirs. Die! He joined forces with another Saint King, beginning the strongest barrage of attacks at Ling Han. Ling Han casually parried a few strikes, and said, You all probably don't know yet, right? I have killed at least 100 demon masters in the netherworld, and there were more than 20 heaven demons among them. With just the few of you now, it is far from enough. He had to be blabbering nonsense, Hu Luo and the other Saint King thought. Otherwise, their fighting spirit would definitely crumble in an instant. Whether you believe it or not, it doesn't matter. Within 3 moves, I will send you 2 to your deaths. Ling Han stimulated the 9 heavens flame. Though he would be able to win even without using this, it would definitely be impossible for him to kill the 2 of them in 3 moves. He aggressively suppressed them, and even if Hu Luo was a big shot among Saint Kings, so what? 1 move, 2, and he was already in desperate straits, and then with a strike from a flaming sword that he had formed from the 9 heavens flame, his physical body and soul were both burnt to nothing. When the other saints from the Hu clan saw this, they were all terrified, and hurriedly stretched open their golden pathways, planning to flee. Yet Ling Han used the banishing technique to throw them into the separate dimension, and when they came back out, he killed each with a single sword strike as if he was merely slaughtering animals. 6 saints were all eliminated practically in a single instant. All the others were numb with shock, and felt that this world was really too surreal. Though Ling Han had also killed a saint before, that was only one, who had seen saints being killed in massive numbers as if they were just vegetables on the chopping block. Ling Han was really invincible. In the past, the means for his strength could not possibly last forever, as he had depended on only a single drop of Saint King blood essence, But now? Not only could he be even more powerful, he had even killed 2 Saint Kings this time. Just ask who else was still not convinced of his superior strength. Ling Han! Ling Han! Ling Han! The disciples all released a tsunami wave of cheers. This scene would eternally remain in their memory, and would also be passed down through the generations. Ling Han smiled at the masses, his expression of pride flashing past before quickly disappearing. This was not his true strength, and furthermore, his 3 power boosts had already been used up. If another saint came, even if it was only a small saint, he would only be able to hide inside the Black Tower. However, after this battle, his name would definitely be known throughout the world, and even the Forbidden Lands would be moved. Would they still dare make an enemy out of him? Who knew if Ling Han would still be able to show his might again? Ling Han took away the spatial spirit tools that the saints of the Hu clan possessed, and there were a large volume of cultivation resources among them, which he handed over to the academy. This was considered a small portion of his compensation to them. As for the rest, it would have to wait when he swept through the 8 stones forbidden land to get it back for them. The Hu clan still had a Saint King, and was still very powerful among the many forbidden lands, but this Saint King was not at the peak stage, and with so many saints dying all at once, the Hu clan would definitely begin to decline. Chapter 1609. Olive Branch. This battle was destined to have far-reaching effects, but for the moment, those effects would not be reflected, because the spreading of the news would need time. The universe was too colossal. Nothing changed in Ling Han's life. He continued to cultivate, and related the matter of merging the regulations of the 2 realms to the Rain Emperor, Su Ran, Ding Ping and the others, and they too began to attempt to do the same. There were still regulations of the Netherworld in the Black Tower. After cultivating beneath the reincarnation tree for a month, the notionless saint, Ding Ping, Jiu Yao, Su Ran, and the others all shook their heads. They were completely unable to merge the regulations of the 2 realms. The 2 could not be merged at all. At most, they could just barely coexist, but once they exited the Black Tower, the regulations of the Netherworld they had grasped would definitely be erased by the heaven and earth of the immortal realm. Only the Rain Emperor was still in seclusion, and 2 months later, he had successfully merged the regulations of the 2 realms of the lowest tier. Though it was the very lowest tier, it was enough to shock everyone. Where there was the first, there would be the second. It was only a matter of time. Ling Han, too, couldn't help but be incredibly impressed by this second brother of his. The Rain Emperor did not possess the Black Tower, nor did he cultivate any Celestial King technique. He had accomplished this all on his own, one step after another, creating a wide path that others would gasp in shock at. This was a true prodigy of martial arts. Previously, everyone had the alchemical pills that Ling Han had left behind. Thus, they were all close to the Eternal River tier by now, and with an alchemy emperor by their side, added with the fact that they themselves were prodigies, there was no need to worry about the comprehension of cultivation level. Even if they wanted their rate of cultivation to slow down, it was not possible. Ling Han nodded. Once everyone had advanced into the Eternal River tier, he would be able to consider improving the pill recipe so that the medicinal effects would not be so powerful, which would allow all of them to be able to use it. Of course, the fact that the medicinal effects were so violent also showed how powerful the effects could be, and if he adjusted the pill recipe, it would definitely lead to a great decline in the medicinal effects. He was again busy, studying pill recipes every day, or discussing the art of formations with the Tranquil Heart Saint while he continued to accumulate origin power. Breaking through to the consummate level of the Eternal River tier was close at hand. Another 3 months later, the Empress finally took a crucial step, and had formed 1,000,001 stars, officially advancing into the pinnacle level of the Eternal River tier. This drew a heavenly tribulation, but because the Empress had 9 doppelgangers, she could distribute the attacks that she sustained, which was equivalent to weakening the might of the heavenly tribulation by 10 times. Furthermore, her 9 doppelgangers could also simultaneously parry the heavenly tribulation, and the joint forces of the 10 of them would further weaken the heavenly tribulation by another 10 times, which was equivalent to her only having to sustain 1/100th of the might of the heavenly tribulation. It naturally was a piece of cake. Next, Ling Han was finally prepared, and also advanced into the consummate level, and began to endure his own heavenly tribulation. His heavenly tribulation would be frightening to others as he had to shatter his own godly bones, so that they would be tempered during the heavenly tribulation. Wang, a golden path suddenly descended from the galaxy, and saintly might abruptly pervaded the area. The Star Sand Saint and the other saints all appeared. The visitor was definitely a saint. He looked towards the skies, and when he saw how Ling Han took the initiative to shatter his own godly bones to be tempered by the heavenly tribulation, he couldn't help but show a sliver of shock. Even a saint king like him would be gaping with shock at this scene. "This boy is Ling Han?" he asked. In reply to "Senior, precisely," the Star Sand Saint replied respectfully, his heart also slightly depressed. At first, he was the strongest elite in a few hundred galaxies, and even when many saints saw him, they would have to respectfully address him as senior. But now, he had become a junior as the visitor was a saint king. The Blue Feather Saint King was silent for a moment, and then said, "It is rumored that a few people of the 8 Stones Forbidden Land all died here?" "Yes," the Star Sand Saint said concisely yet comprehensively, though his heart shook. The news of the previous battle had finally spread to the various Forbidden Lands. "Tell me the details of the battle," the Blue Feather Saint King commanded. The Star Sand Saint related the battle from the beginning to end, and did not add the slightest bit, nor did he detract from it the slightest. He merely described the battle from his point of view. Furthermore, he even withdrew his own memories to reconstruct the situation at that time. Seeing 2 Saint Kings working together to attack Ling Han, yet instead ending up killed by Ling Han in 3 moves, the Blue Feather Saint King couldn't help a drastic change in his expression. Before this, though he had already confirmed the news of 2 Saint Kings dying in battle, he still had some doubt, and thought it was possible that some powerful Forbidden Lands had made their move, and used Ling Han's name to kill the 2 Saint Kings. But now he could confirm that his previous guess had been wrong. This young man was awfully powerful. Behind him, the 3 young people also showed expressions of shock. They really couldn't believe it. A man whose cultivation level was even lower than theirs actually managed to slaughter saints, and the person slaughtered was even a Saint King, and furthermore, it was not just one. The Blue Feather Saint King withdrew his expression of astonishment. He already decided to maintain good relations with Ling Han, and smilingly said, "Merely his enduring a heavenly tribulation is so shocking, no wonder he possesses such enigmatic methods." He did not speak any further, obviously wanting to wait until Ling Han finished enduring the heavenly tribulation to converse with him. The Star Sand Saint did not dare to take the initiative to speak up, and neither could he leave. He could only stand on one side, his heart even more suppressed. By now, he was close to becoming a specialist escort, and it could be expected that the Blue Feather Saint King was only the first. There would be more Star Sand Saints arriving. Half a day later, Ling Han had completed enduring the heavenly tribulation, and by channeling a drop of indestructible true fluid, his body was instantly reformed, completely unscathed. This naturally brought another surprise to the Blue Feather Saint King and the others. "Young friend." The Blue Feather Saint King beckoned Ling Han over, all smiles. Ling Han descended and greeted with clasped hands. "Greetings, Senior." The Blue Feather Saint King paused slightly, and then continued, "Young friend, your military successes are formidable, managing to even slaughter Saint Kings. I do not dare to put on the airs of a senior in front of you. If you are angered, and kill me as well, what am I to do?" When he said the last words, he was smiling. Naturally, he was deliberately joking with Ling Han. "You can just call me Big Brother," he said. The 3 juniors from the White Rainbow Forbidden Land all froze. In their hearts, the Grand Elder had always been solemn and austere, and he was absolute authority. Yet now they actually saw him joking around, making them feel as if their perceptions of the world were about to crumble. Furthermore, "Big Brother." Gasp. Ling Han also grinned and answered, "Then I will humbly oblige." He had killed Saint Kings, and furthermore, it was not just one, so if he continued to put on the act of a junior, it would instead cause the saint to feel uneasy. Though he was now only in the Eternal River tier, what if he suddenly flew into a rage, and again became powerful? Ling Han conversed with the Blue Feather Saint King for a very long time, mainly about the matter of merging the 2 realms. The White Rainbow Forbidden Land had not joined the Heaven-Crushing Alliance, but it did not hinder them from being strong, nor did it hinder them from knowing how to open the doors to the Celestial Realm. Before this, everything was mere fantasy. They naturally had no interest in joining the heaven-crushing alliance, but now that Ling Han had appeared, especially when he had even killed Saint Kings, the White Rainbow Forbidden Land naturally set their hearts on him. They were determined to board this ship, and even if the merging of the two realms ultimately failed, they would be able to enter into the celestial realm via Ling Han's help. Thus, this time, it was the Blue Feather Saint King himself who appeared personally. Chapter 16:10 Gathering of Saints. Finally, the White Rainbow Forbidden Land formed an alliance with Ling Han. If one of them was in trouble, the other would provide assistance. This was an expression of goodwill from the Blue Feather Saint King to Ling Han. Otherwise, did the White Rainbow Forbidden Land have to worry about others using force on them? The people from the White Rainbow Forbidden Land had not left when a new Forbidden Land had arrived. It was the Extreme Forbidden Land, and they were similarly led by a Saint King, who had 4 juniors with him since he was bringing juniors with him. He naturally was not hostile. Then, there were several other Forbidden Lands arriving, and all of a sudden, Wood Figure Planet suddenly had many saints. Their numbers were close to exceeding the number of Eternal River Tiers. It was practically enough to make one wonder if it was the Eternal River Tier that was harder to reach than the Genesis Tier. After the saints from the Forbidden Land saw the memories and image of the battle between Ling Han and Hu Luo and another Saint King, they were all very polite to Ling Han. In front of these supreme elites, whatever age, background and aptitude were no more than empty words. Genuine strength was the only thing that they would take seriously. Ling Han was qualified to be their equal in their relations. The atmosphere on Wood Figure Planet also became very peaceful because of this. The saints all made an agreement of alliance with Ling Han, and there were even a great many Forbidden Lands that were even more decisive, wanting to form a connection with Ling Han through marriage. In their eyes, only this kind of alliance was the most dependable. Yet Ling Han shook his head. Seriously, forming a connection with him through marriage was no joke. What if it drew out that little jealous lover of his? They all would be raised instantly. A great many Forbidden Lands naturally gave out many gifts, which were considerably valuable. But there was no saint-grade godly metal that Ling Han wanted. It was too precious. There might not be that many pieces even in the whole Forbidden Land. It was absolutely impossible such an exorbitantly valuable gift would be given upon the first meeting. If they were unwilling to give it, then he would just have to buy from them. Taking advantage of the fact that so many saints were present, Ling Han decisively conducted a treasure exchange. They naturally would be giving him some face at present. All the Forbidden Lands participated. However, it was not every Forbidden Land that had a Saint King. There would also be weaker and stronger Forbidden Lands. Thus, if they did not have a Saint King, they would send out a great saint, and if they didn't even have a great saint, then a medium saint would come, and if they still did not have a medium saint, that was impossible. Those that could become Forbidden Lands would at least have a medium saint in their ranks. Ling Han drew out the reincarnation tree leaves, and steeped a cup of tea in front of them, and had every saint take a small sip. Suddenly, all the saints were excited. This could allow them to comprehend Tao. This was too awesome. A precious treasure. This was natural. Not just them, even if this was in the celestial realm, the celestial kings could also comprehend the regulations of heaven and earth through the reincarnation tree leaves. Of course, Ling Han's reincarnation tree leaves were too unorthodox as they had been produced through an accelerated process. They definitely would have no effect on celestial kings, and their effects on even ascending origin tiers and immortal palace tiers would also be very light. But for dividing soul tiers and severing mundane tiers, this could still be called a supreme celestial treasure. Then to these saints, how could this not be awesome enough? Ling Han made a promise with the saints. This kind of exchange would be effective in the long term. Though some saints were envious and had the urge to rob him, they then thought of the memory image depicting how Ling Han had practically killed 2 Saint Kings in an instant that they had seen previously, as well as remembered the news that had also spread from the side of the netherworld, where Ling Han had slaughtered over 100 demon masters in a single battle, and there were even more than 20 heaven demons among them. When this news spread out, those Saint Kings became even more polite to Ling Han, and the attitudes of the great saints and medium saints could practically be called humble. See, his trump card could be used again and again, so who knew how many more times he could show his might? As long as there was another time, The Saint Kings here would probably be enough for Ling Han to make another massacre. Strength was naturally produced through battle. Were over 100 demon masters and 2 Saint Kings still not enough for Ling Han to establish his might? Even in the hearts of the various forbidden lands, Ling Han was also the equivalent of a demon god. Now, aside from some extremely remote and closed-off forbidden lands, it could be claimed that Ling Han's name was known throughout the world, and he could completely continue just by depending on his face. Another few months later, the Grand Elders of the various forbidden lands all left, but a considerable number of the younger generation stayed behind, wanting to further their amiable relations with Ling Han. There were even a great many that were exquisite beauties who could match divine fairies in their looks, and their goals were considerably impure. Ling Han completely ignored them. After breaking through to the consummate level, he first newly inscribed the limitless 9 deaths formations on his godly bones. The number had soared up from 27 all the way to 99, which made even the tranquil heart saint dumbfounded. However, even 99 killing formations could not possibly match a small saint. Genesis tier was too hard to break into, and once they became a saint tier, their abilities naturally would be earth-shatteringly powerful. Next, Ling Han continued to work hard on cultivation. Now, he had enough alchemical pills to allow him to rush up to the peak stage of the consummate level. Since that was the case, he naturally had no need to do something like go on exploration trips in some ancient sites. He only had to work hard on cultivation underneath the reincarnation tree. Time passed quietly, and there was absolutely no movement from the 8 Stones forbidden land at all. Even their 2 Saint Kings had died, so they did not even dare talk about the matter of vengeance. It was already a stroke of luck for them that Ling Han did not seek them out to make trouble, and they obediently lowered their heads and behaved. In the blink of an eye, another 3 years had already passed. The Empress had already formed 9,999,999 stars, and was only a single star away from the end of the pinnacle level of the Eternal River tier, but at this time, even if the Empress was a supreme divine fetus, she also reached a bottleneck. She could not make that final step. She began a deep seclusion beneath the reincarnation tree, determined that she would not stop unless she had taken that last step. After the heavenly phoenix divine maiden returned to the immortal realm, her cultivation level spiked as if she had a cheat code. The inheritance of the 3 true Phoenix Saint Kings was fully boosting her, and added with the help of alchemical pills and the reincarnation tree, she had already soared to the consummate level of the Eternal River tier, and was beginning to attempt breaking through to the Saint tier. She did not even think of wanting to cultivate the pinnacle level of the Eternal River tier. Ding Ping, Jiuyao, and the others also reached the low extreme of the Eternal River tier. The Rain Emperor was even more impressive as he had advanced into the high extreme of the Eternal River tier, and furthermore, he had merged the regulations of the 2 realms on the high extreme level. Luck is not too bad. Though I did not get much Saint-grade godly metal, I unexpectedly obtained high Crimson Blood and Purple Valley godly metal, and together with the heavenly phoenix feather I got long ago, I am now only missing the true dragon horn. When I have reached the pinnacle level of the Eternal River tier, I will seek out Long Xiangyue and make a trip to the Long tribe, and get the true dragon horn to fulfill my agreement with the heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire. However, this time, I don't have Hunyo with me anymore. Wouldn't it be terrible if I were lost in the darkness? Hence, I will have to go only after I reach the pinnacle level of the Eternal River tier. It would be safer. In these 3 years, Ling Han also reached the peak stage of the consummate level of the Eternal River tier, and had to work hard to take that last step into the next level. He ingested pills every day, and continued his accumulation. He also comprehended Tao beneath the reincarnation tree every day to bring up his comprehension of cultivation level. Once he broke through, he would be able to soar to the skies. 2 months later, he rushed out of the Black Tower, and entered into the galaxy. Suddenly, dark clouds rolled out, and thunder boomed. The heavenly tribulation was here. Chapter 1611. Long Tribe. The greatest benefit of breaking through to the pinnacle level for Ling Han was that his godly bones would advance to saint grade. He inscribed a total of 999 limitless 9 deaths formations on his godly bones in one go. In truth, he very much wanted to inscribe saint grade killing formations. Unfortunately, without advancing into the saint tier himself, even if his godly bones could support them, it would be useless. They would only be an empty frame, and could not be activated at all. However, a quantitative change could form a qualitative change. 999 limitless 9 deaths formations. Just what kind of concept was that? It was definitely not just 999 cultivators at the consummate level of the eternal river tier combining forces, merging together to attack. The boost of power would be 10 times to 100 times that. Ling Han felt an itch in his heart. He sought out the tranquil heart saint, and the two of them engaged in a spar. The result was astonishing. Ling Han actually suppressed the tranquil heart saint. They both depended on formations, but the might of the simultaneous activation of 999 limitless 9 deaths formations was actually stronger than even a saint formation. Of course, if Ling Han could inscribe 10 saint-grade killing formations inside his body now, that would definitely be even more amazing. It was only now that Ling Han truly possessed the ability to kill a saint with his own battle prowess. The issue was that just what saint would clearly know that he was no match for Ling Han, and still be determined to battle him to the death? After all, his strength was not equipped with an overwhelming advantage. When a saint sensed something was off as the battle continued, how could it be that they would not flee? Aside from killing formations, whether it was the banishing technique, darkness of the paramount night, flying dragon shadow hands, or other such celestial techniques, they all had no effect on saints, but the 9 heavens flame, divine demon sword, and the broken wooden sword were still very frightening. Even saint kings would dare not be touched or struck by these attacks. Ling Han finally felt it was about enough, and went to seek out Long Xiangyue. "Take me to see your aunt," he said directly. Long Xiangyue's expression was filled with resentment. This fickle guy, being surrounded by the exquisite beauties of the Forbidden Lands every day, was now having designs on her aunt. Was he planning to have both aunt and niece? He was really too shameless. She was thinking this in her heart, yet her head involuntarily nodded and she replied, "All right." When the words left her mouth, she almost slapped herself. She actually agreed to such a preposterous request. When she thought that she and her aunt would be lying on the same bed, and this guy would show a perverted expression, suddenly pouncing on them, her face flushed as red as blood, yet she looked a bit dazed as well. Ling Han was a little baffled. When had this fierce woman become such a love-struck fool? He grabbed Long Xiangyue and stuffed her into the cloud-piercing shuttle. It rose into the air, and entered into the galaxy. Why do you not use the means of saints, and directly travel through space? Long Xiangyue asked Ling Han in confusion, coming back to her senses after a very long time. Fuck! Ling Han was mocking in his heart. If he could, he naturally wanted to. Spreading out a golden path. Just how eye-catching was that? But how could the present him have that ability? Putting aside the fact that he could no longer use a power boost from the Black Tower, even if he could, and merely used it to travel quickly, the exorbitance of doing something like that was something that even he would not be able to forgive himself for. Women, what mysterious beings. When Long Xiangyue saw that Ling Han did not answer her, she used her own understanding. Now that both of us are aboard the shuttle, wouldn't it be a rare journey where it is just the two of us? Does he want to have more time alone with me? With this thought, she couldn't help but become more infatuated. If he wants to do that to me, should I allow it or not? If I allow it, would it seem as if I were too unreserved? If I don't, what if it angers him, and he ignores me in future? Then I will just half allow it and half refuse. Halt! Seeing Ling Han and Long Xiangyue approach, the young man stretched out his hand to stop their advance. Who are the two of you? Long Xiangyue couldn't help but be irritated. She did not recognize these two people, but was absolutely sure that they were not members of the Long tribe. Otherwise, how could she possibly be unaware that two young prodigies that had broken through to the Eternal River tier had appeared in the tribe? I should be the one asking this question. Who are you two? She released her aura, already preparing for a battle. The young man smiled slightly. I am Yang Zige. May I know how I should address you, miss? Long Xiangyue. This princess of the Long Xiangyue looked towards that young woman. Jing Yi, the woman answered. What do you mean by standing guard at the entrance to my auntie's residence? Long Xiangyue directly questioned. That was what her personality was like. Chapter 1612. Open Cloud's Forbidden Land. Jingyi smiled.
Miss Long, at present, Lady Yushan is with our young master, so it would be best that you two do not disturb them for now. And who is your young master?
Long Xiangyue's brows wrinkled in a frown. Open Cloud's Forbidden Land, Zhongbadu. Jingyi and Yang Zige announced simultaneously, their tone filled with respect as if a supreme god was standing in front of them. Ling Han was startled. The Open Cloud's Forbidden Land. Open Cloud's King. All those years ago, the Heavenly River King had been betrayed by the Open Cloud's King, so he faced enemies both in front and behind him. Otherwise, with how he had cultivated a Celestial King technique, it was very possible that he would be able to open the doors to the Celestial Realm. This also filled the Heavenly River King with great resentment, and he strongly requested his heir to kill the Open Cloud's King in his will. So this Open Cloud's King established the Open Cloud's Forbidden Land after that.
Never heard of it.
Long Xiangyue raised a brow. Out of the way, I want to see my auntie. Apologies, Miss Long. Jingyi smiled apologetically, but showed no intention to move out of the way and let them pass. Long Xiangyue was angered. This was the Long tribe, and two outsiders like you actually dared to stand in her way. Was there any more law in this place? With a chong, she drew her sword, her expression dark, and she was already filled with killing intent. She was just about to move when her shoulder suddenly felt a weight. No matter how much she tried, she could not take another step.
She turned to look, and saw that one of Ling Han's hands was pressing down on her shoulder.
You are no match for them, Ling Han said. Though Long Xiangyue's rate of advancement could not be considered slow, she presently was only at the peak stage of the low extreme of the Eternal River tier, while Jingyi and Yang Zige were in the pinnacle level of the Eternal River tier. He is worrying about me. Long Xiangyue couldn't help but feel a sweetness in her heart, all her fury suddenly dissipating into thin air. Ling Han withdrew his hand and said to Jingyi and Yang Zige, those who are guests should behave like guests. It is not proper for the guest to overwhelm the host. Who are you? These two people looked at Ling Han, a sliver of seriousness in their expressions. Similarly in the Eternal River tier, they naturally realized how strong Ling Han was, and treated him seriously and cautiously. Ling Han. Ling Han. Their expressions were filled with confusion, obviously not having heard of Ling Han's name. But since his surname was Ling, it meant that he was not related to the Long tribe, causing the two of them to dispense with their wariness. Ho ho, so you are only a guest. What right do you have to fault us? Yang Zige asked calmly. It is true that I don't. However, if I wish to enter, what right do you two have to stop me? Ling Han pointed at the main doors. Do you have that strength? Jingyi's fighting spirit blazed. Every king tier was definitely battle-thirsty. Otherwise, without experiencing multiple battles, how could they possibly reach that kind of height? Ling Han did not say a word, and only took a step forwards. Sensing the movement in the air, Jingyi and Yang Zige also took a step forwards at the same time, both of them raising their hands and planning to make a move. But in the next moment, they were shocked because they had not even made their move, and Ling Han's palms were already pressing down on their respective shoulders. It was as if their senses had experienced a momentary lapse, and after a dazed moment, the situation had come to this. If Ling Han had not placed his hands on their shoulders, but rather on their heads, the two of them couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. Then Ling Han would only have to exert strength, and he would be able to directly shatter their spirit. No matter how prodigious they were, so what? Their only result was death. Ling Han patted their shoulders and said, behave and stand aside. He withdrew his hands, and Jingyi and Yang Zige hurriedly dodged to either side. They were so shocked that their hearts were throbbing violently. It was clear that they were all in the pinnacle level of the Eternal River tier, so why was the gap between them so wide? It was as if they would not be able to last one single move from Ling Han.
Young master has commanded us. No one is to disturb them.
Yang Zige forced out through clenched teeth, and drew his weapon. It was a battle dagger axe. Divine patterns glowed one after another, boosting his aura to an incredibly strong level. Jingyi did the same. She used a pair of blades, and the aura that he exuded was not the slightest bit inferior to Yang Zige. Ling Han smiled carelessly and said,
Seeing as the two of you are only obeying orders, I will be more merciful.
Jing Yi and Yang Zige both exclaimed lightly, and charged in attack, wielding their respective weapons. Wang, divine patterns glowed, their aggression spreading out like an ocean. Long Xiangyue's pretty face couldn't help but pale. Though she was conceited, she definitely did not think she would be able to match this kind of battle prowess. Putting aside the question of emerging victorious, it was a question whether or not she would be able to even parry a single attack. However, she was filled with confidence in Ling Han. He was a man who had even killed 2 Saint Kings, so what were mere eternal river tears worth? Ling Han very casually waved his hand, and banished their 2 attacks. He easily arrived in front of Yang Zige, and shot out a punch. Ah! Yang Zige suddenly shouted, and stumbled backwards, his nose bleeding wildly. Ling Han turned around, and looked towards Jing Yi. Jing Yi couldn't help but take a step back. The gap between the two of them was too wide. She would not be a match for him even if she put her life on the line.
Humph! At this moment, a stern voice rang out from within the courtyard, and the doors to the courtyard opened on their own. A young man was standing afar within the courtyard. It was as if his whole person was the center of the heaven and earth, and others could only worship him. Young master. Both Jing Yi and Yang Zige hurriedly knelt, and paid their greetings to this young man. The young man raised his hand slightly, allowing Jing Yi and Yang Zige to stand. Only then did he turn his eyes to Ling Han and Long Xiangyue. His gaze did not linger for long on Ling Han. Instead, he stared at Long Xiangyue for a long time, a strange smile involuntarily appearing on his lips. "Auntie!" Long Xiangyue suddenly called out. A woman appeared in the courtyard, and she looked to be in her 20s. Black locks cascaded down her shoulders, while there were 2 small dragon horns growing on her head. Needless to say, this woman was Long Yushan. What impressive courage, to actually dare wound my subordinates.
Zhong Badu exclaimed coldly, finally fixing his eyes on Ling Han directly. "Ho ho, are you dissatisfied?" Ling Han asked calmly.
Zhong Badu's eyes narrowed. He was a saint. A mere eternal river tear actually dared be insolent in front of him. What justice was there left in his world? He definitely could not be considered a good-tempered person. Furthermore, what need was there for a saint to have reservations in doing things? Immediately, he stretched out his hand to press down on Ling Han. Pa! His hand had not even landed when Long Yushan swiftly moved. An intimidating dragon's might spread out, and this attack from him was forcefully blocked. "Don't move!" Long Yushan declared in displeasure. Zhong Badu's expression shifted slightly, but he immediately smiled and said, "Fine, just for the sake of Yushan, I will spare this person just once." With a flutter of his sleeve, he left proudly, and Jing Yi and Yang Zige hurriedly followed behind him. "Auntie, who is this guy so arrogant?" Long Xiangyue hurriedly ran to Long Yushan's side, pulling on her hand, and began to act like a spoiled child. Long Yushan cast a doting look on her, and evenly answered, "He is my fiancé." "Pooh!" Long Xiangyue abruptly spluttered. A saintly medicine. Though the Long tribe was powerful for this moment, no one knew that the Grand Elder of the Long tribe had actually always had internal injury. That was a Dao injury that had been left behind when he had forcefully broken through many years ago, and could only be healed by saintly medicine. You're tuning in to the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.